Catherine's POV. "Kate, it is time to get up," my mother called happily through the mind link. "You have class in 1 hour." I moaned and pulled the blanket over my head. "Please, 5 more minutes," I replied over the mind link, still asleep. The dream had been so vivid that giving it up now would leave me wondering what had happened next. My thoughts continue to follow the same path, clinging to the last few minutes of the dream. "Kate," my father roared over the mind link and shattered the dream. I sat up, disoriented. "You had better show up in 10 minutes or—" I got out of bed and dashed to the bathroom before I could hear the rest of his threat. Exactly 10 minutes later, I walked down the stairs, fully dressed and ready for school. I didn't expect to walk into a dining room full of wolves waiting for me. "Happy birthday, Kate!" The group of wolves cheered and my face flushed crimson. Oh, goddess, how could I have forgotten my 17th birthday? I will be getting my wolf today. And maybe, just maybe, I might find my mate. Brian, my boyfriend and the future beta of the pack, was hoping to be mates. We have been dating for almost 2 years. My mother walked to my side and pulled me into a side hug. Her swollen belly, with the newest member of our family, was due anytime soon. Yet, even though she was in the last stretch of her pregnancy, she never complained, and her blue eyes sparkled in delight. "Happy birthday, sweetie," she said, smiled, and kissed me on the cheek. "Thank you, Mother," I said, feeling embarrassed. "Are you excited about meeting your wolf?" she asked curiously. "I'm a bit nervous," I answered. I have heard stories that could raise the hair on any person's back. Receiving a wolf was a blessing, yet it could be just as much of a curse. It all depended on the wolf you were blessed with. "Don't worry, dear," she said. "Your wolf will be special. I just know it." I smiled down at the pitied 5'6" woman and nodded my head. My mother was always right, and she has never been wrong before. "Can we have a turn to wish Kate a happy birthday?" my father asked teasingly. "You can't keep her for yourself." "And why not?" my mother challenged my father, raising a perfect blonde eyebrow at my 6'4" father. My father looked down at my mother and took a step back, and the room fell quiet, building tension between them. The saying that the strongest poison comes in the smallest bottle crossed my mind, and a giggle escaped my lips as I watched my parents sizing up one another. My mother might be small, but she had my father exactly where she wanted him. A smile played on the corners of my father's lips, and he opened his arms for his mate. My mother didn't hesitate and went to my father's side. My father's gaze turned to me, and a mocking smile reached his lips. "You're still scared of my threats, are you?" he asked. I hesitated, and he burst out laughing. "I'm glad you listened, got up and dressed, otherwise everyone would have marched into your room to wish you a happy birthday," he told me. My eyes widened, and a nervous giggle escaped my lips. That would have been embarrassing. I didn't want the pack to see me half asleep and drooling over my pillow, and I let out a breath of relief. My father let go of my mother and pulled me into a bone-crushing hug. When my father let me go, Sarah, my best friend, and my younger brother Jimmy peeked from behind my father. "Happy birthday, sis," Jimmy said, beating Sarah to it. His messy brown hair was standing in all directions on his head, yet it gave him the look every she-wolf admired. At 15, he already stood over 6 feet and towered over my 5'7" frame. "Thank you," I said, smiling, and Sarah was next to wish me a happy birthday. "So," I asked as I took a seat at the table with my plate of food, "where is Brian?" Sarah froze in her seat and peeked through her strawberry blonde hair, not saying a word. She looked like a deer caught in headlights. "He will meet us at school," Jimmy said, keeping his face blank. I knitted my eyebrows together, a bit confused, but dropped the subject. Breakfast ended, and my father called me aside. "Yes, Father," I answered and gestured to Sarah and Jimmy that I would meet them outside. "I have something for you," he said. "Come on, follow me." I followed my father through the pack house and down to the parking lot, and just before we came around the next bend, he stopped and took a blindfold out. "Put this on," he said. "Okay," I complied, yet a bit of worry spiked inside me. "Take my hand," he ordered, and I complied. He slowly started to walk forward. I felt a bit silly walking with my eyes covered. Yet, by some miraculous miracle, I didn't trip and fall. My father came to a stop and let go of my hand. I could hear footsteps and a scuffle. "Are you ready?" my father asked, and I nodded my head. As ready as I can be, I answered nervously. You can remove your blindfold, my mother said. I did just that and blinked against the warm summer sun before I noticed the brand new cherry-red Tesla S convertible. My jaw dropped, and I blinked a couple of times to process what I was seeing. Do you like it? My father asked. Like it? I shook my head. No, I love it. I grabbed my father by the neck, hugging him for dear life. This was the biggest gift I ever received. My mother walked closer and handed me the keys. I'm glad you like it, sweetie, she said. Thank you, Mom. Drive safe, she said, moving away. You better get a move on. The school day starts in 20 minutes. I rushed toward my new baby, got in, and started the car. She roared to life and then silently purred around me. Oh, goddess, this is going to be so much fun! I reversed the car, waved at my parents, and drove toward the entrance of the pack house, finding Sarah and Jimmy waiting patiently. I pressed the horn, which pulled a lot of attention toward me and my new car, and Jimmy's eyes widened when he saw me sitting behind the wheel. Come on, guys, I called. We are going to be late. Jimmy and Sarah rushed to the car, with Jimmy yelling, "Shotgun," to sit in front, and as soon as they were in the car, I sped towards the school. The drive to school didn't take us long, and soon I took the turnoff towards school. I found a parking lot and parked the car. Wow! Jimmy yelled out as a group of admirers came closer to look at my new baby. I giggled in response, got out of the car, and started toward the entrance of Dark Moon High. What I saw next when I entered the building had me in awe and frozen in my tracks. Catherine's POV. My heart pounded out of my chest as I entered the doors to Dark Moon High. Everywhere I looked, massive balloons hung all around the halls. Brian spotted me, and a broad smile played on his lips as he stalked toward me. Happy birthday, he whispered. Do you like it? Wow. I managed to gasp out the word. I never suspected that he would go this far. Double wow. I guess you liked it then, he said, pulling me to his broad chest. Yes, I answered. I do. How did? Brian turned toward Sarah and Jimmy standing behind me, both with big smiles on their faces. I got some help. That's why you didn't want to tell me, I asked Sarah, and she nodded her head. This is a major surprise. Thank you. Not as big as those pretty new wheels you got from your parents, Brian commented, but I did try to compete. Well, I assure you, I said, this is so far the best birthday I ever had. Well, it is not over yet, Brian said, and his light brown eyes, with specks of gold, lit up excited. I knew what he was hinting at, and I prayed to the moon goddess that we were indeed mates. Otherwise, this could end awkwardly. The first bell rang, and we all rushed to our lockers to get our books for the first period. The rest of the morning passed so fast that Sarah hooked her arm in with mine when the second period ended, and we headed to the cafeteria. Brian waited for us at our table, deep in thought. He lifted his gaze the second he noticed us. And? He asked. How was class? Brian and I didn't have any classes together, which only gave us time to meet and see each other at lunch and after school. Same old, I answered. English was long and boring. We were busy with Macbeth, and science was interesting. Mr. Davenport blew up the lab again, Sarah commented, annoyed. I chuckled under my breath, noticing the annoyance on Sarah's face. Sarah loved science, and she could get a bit grumpy when things didn't go as they should. On the other hand, I enjoyed seeing things blow up, except if they smelled like rotten eggs. How was your class? I asked as Jimmy handed me my lunch. Boring, he answered with a pout. I would have enjoyed it more if I was with you. You are such a flirt, Jimmy said, taking a seat. What are you guys going to do if you are not mates? Brian's gaze met mine, asking the silent question. We have spoken about it, yet we couldn't decide what to do. I don't know, I said, feeling annoyed that Jimmy would spoil my good mood. Yet I felt scared as well. Brian and I fit together like a hand and a glove. I loved him, and he showed me numerous times how much he loved and cared for me too. Well, Brian said, smiling, trying to break the tension at the table, we can always decide to be chosen mates. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. That could be the only option. But what if we found our mates after that? Would our chosen mate bond be strong enough to withstand the fated mate bond? The bell rang, breaking my chain of thoughts, and we got up to leave for our next period. The rest of the day, my mind was occupied with what-ifs. I didn't concentrate in class, and when the teacher asked a question, Sarah had to mind-link the answers to the questions. She could see that this mate subject was slowly eating me alive. When the last period ended, Sarah pulled me into the ladies' washroom and locked the door. "Kate," she said sternly, "we have been friends for a long time." That I knew. We have been friends since kindergarten. Sarah was the girl that everyone ignored because her parents were new members of the pack. I, on the other hand, found the fragile little girl exciting. Her strawberry blonde hair was always neatly braided, and her hair would flame up when she was angry, but the most interesting part of her anger was her eyes. Her forest green eyes would glow against her porcelain skin. Sarah pinned my gaze, her face full of love, yet she was serious. "Stop this now," she said. "If you and Brian are meant for one another, the goddess will make sure you end up together." She sighed and took a step back, suddenly looking tired. She turned and walked toward the sink. "You are my best friend, Kate," she said, staring at herself in the mirror, "but I will not allow you to freak out about something like that." She turned her head toward me. Her gaze was a bit softer than a second ago. "I really like Brian, and you two are good for each other, so don't misunderstand." She lifted her eyebrows and dropped her gaze. "If you two are not mates, do not decide to claim one another as chosen mates." "Why not?" I asked, feeling almost betrayed. "Because," she lifted her head, "my parents were chosen mates." "Wait, what?" I asked, shaking my head, confused. She let out a deep breath before she continued. "It's a long story, Kate, but know this. I saw what happened when my father found his fated mate, and it isn't pretty." "Is Helen?" She nodded her head. "Yes, Helen is my stepmother," she answered. "My mother couldn't handle the rejection, and the bond between my father and Helen was so strong that he couldn't get it over his heart to reject her." Tears filled Sarah's eyes, and I walked closer to comfort my friend. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I didn't know." "I know," she said. "I was ashamed." "Don't be," I answered. I could understand why Sarah never told me. This was big. No, it was huge. I wiped my friend's face and grabbed her hand in mine. "Let's go home," I told her. "We need to get ready for my party." Catherine's POV. "Kate, we are going to be late." My mother's voice echoed over the mind link. I was still busy getting ready for tonight's proceedings. I had just walked out of the bathroom. "I'll meet you there," I answered her and shut off the link. It was still far too early for me to go down to the clearing, yet my mother wanted me to join her and welcome all the pack members who were coming down to see my first shift. I was a bit nervous, and I was fiddling nervously. When I got home from school, I told Sarah that I needed to think about everything she had said, and I went up to my room. Jimmy followed and asked if I was okay. "Nothing to worry about," I told him. "I'm just nervous about tonight." He understood and let me be. That was 4 hours ago. I guess Jimmy told Mom and Dad that I needed to have some time for myself. I sighed out loud, dropped the bathroom towel on the floor, and looked at my reflection in the mirror on the wall. My gaze moved over my perfect features. I still believed my auburn, wavy hair was the best feature I had. I dropped my head to the side, inspecting my toned body. I wasn't the tallest and biggest of the she-wolves around, yet I wasn't the shortest or smallest. My body was toned and in perfect shape from all the extensive training I had with my father. I had curves in all the right places that any male wolf would adore, and my hands moved over my breast. They were firm under my hands, and to me, they were just the right size. I sighed out loud, and my gaze wandered up toward the reflection of my face in the mirror. I looked tired, and black rings had started to form under my eyes. Was that because of all the worry today? Did I do this to myself? No wonder Sarah was getting worried. I walked closer to the mirror, moving my fingers over the dark purple-black rings. My emerald green eyes suddenly changed to a deep golden color, and startled, I took a step away from the mirror. A cold shiver ran down my spine, and I noticeably shivered. That must have been my imagination. I slowly took a step forward, looking at my eyes again. Nothing seemed out of place. I sighed and dropped my gaze. I guess with all the excitement of my shift tonight and worry about Brian and me being mates, I was now going mad and seeing things. I shook my head, annoyed, and lifted my gaze. This time, golden eyes stared back at me, and I yelped out in surprise, feeling my heart pounding uncontrollably against my chest. A burst of sweet, angelic laughter sounded in my mind. "Hello?" I asked, feeling silly about asking the question. Yet again, I was greeted by amusing laughter. I sighed as I watched my eyes change back to their emerald green color, and I shook my head in disbelief. I was seriously losing my mind today. I turned and walked to my walk-in closet and searched for the clothes I would be wearing tonight. I have decided on a white floral dress with big yellow flower prints. It was decent enough for the shifting, yet I wouldn't feel bad if the dress was ripped in the process. I found my white sandals and put them on, and then I sat at the dressing table to do my hair. Usually Sarah would come over and do my hair for me on special occasions, but I assured her that I would manage to do my hair myself. Another breath left my lips as I pulled the hot iron through my hair. My mind was racing in all directions. Why the long face? An angelic voice echoed in my mind, interrupting my thoughts and, in the process, startling me. "Now you want to talk?" I growled. "My dear girl," she said, "I was a bit distracted by how beautiful you are, and because it is my first time walking the earth, and I was a bit nervous and overexcited about meeting you." I rolled my eyes at her, yet I couldn't help but blush. "Thank you," I said, "and welcome to Earth." She chuckled, and her voice was like a melody written only for me to hear. "I'm Kia, by the way," she said, and I could feel her move inside my mind. "I'm Catherine," she said, cutting me off. "I know, the goddess told me all about you." "Really?" I gasped, surprised. "Yes," she answered, "the goddess is very fond of you." I couldn't help but smile. "Will you reveal yourself?" I asked, hoping for her to show me what she looked like. "You will only be able to see me when we have shifted," she answered. "Until then, I am only a presence in your mind." "So, I need to wait until midnight?" I challenged. "Yes," she answered. "Now I feel like Cinderella," I said, rolling my eyes. "Yet Cinderella transformed back at midnight. You will shift in your wolf at that time," she argued, "and the magic is permanent, not like Cinderella's." I guess I received a smart-mouthed wolf as well. This might just end interestingly. "Can you help me fix these black rings under my eyes?" I asked, and Kia chuckled, finding me amusing. "Of course," she answered. "The fairy godmother is doing her first magic trick." And before my eyes, the black rings under my eyes vanished. "Thanks," I said, and I picked up the brush to comb through my hair, then tied it up in a loose ponytail. I pulled my makeup case closer, searched for the items I needed, and finished off my face 5 minutes later. "Perfect," I said and pouted. A soft knock sounded from the door, and I got up to see who was there. As soon as I opened the door, the most intoxicating scent of forest and pinewood hit my nostrils. "Mate!" Catherine's POV. "Mate!" Kia yelled out, excited in my mind. Yet I was unable to respond. The scent was sending me on an intoxicating trip. "Mine!" A familiar husky voice echoed in my ears, breaking the spell on me, and I lifted my gaze, finding Brian before me. My heart fluttered in my chest, and a smile followed on my lips. Brian grabbed me around the waist and pulled me into his rock-hard chest. "Thank the goddess," Brian said happily. I was starting to worry. I pulled away from him, and he carefully wiped the tears from my face. I hadn't even noticed that I was crying out of joy. "I think you should go redo your makeup," he suggested after a silent moment. "Everyone would know you have been crying." I didn't argue and nodded my head. I turned around, grabbed my makeup bag, and walked back toward my washroom. I sighed, relieved when I closed the door behind me. Finally, I could tell the world that Brian was my mate, and I didn't need to worry that he would claim someone else. Finally, the worry was over. I closed my eyes and silently thanked the goddess for mating me with Brian. Brian lay on my bed with his arms behind his head, waiting patiently for me to get ready. He too looked relaxed and happy. The stress of not knowing was gone, and everything was now slowly falling into place. "Ready?" I asked, as he seemed to be lost in thought. He didn't hear me opening the door of the washroom. His eyes snapped towards me, and a smile appeared on his lips. "Yes," he said. "We had better go before your mother sends the warrior on a search for you." I chuckled and walked closer, and Brian pulled me into his lap. Our gazes locked, and Brian didn't hesitate to crush his lips on mine. On the spur of the moment, the kiss intensified, and before we knew what we were doing, we were both nicked. "Catherine Jones!" My mother's voice growled over the mind link, startling me in the process. If you do not present yourself in less than 5 minutes, I will come and get you myself. I flew off the bed, searching for my clothes, and Brian looked at me, bewildered. What? He asked. Mom? That was all I said, and Brian jumped from the bed, searching for his clothes. It was the fastest I have ever gotten dressed and ready. Mother found us on the stairs, giving me a death glare. That was until she saw the lazy smile on Brian's lips. My apologies, Luna. It is my fault that Kate is late. You are mates, she gasped, and a smile immediately followed on her lips. No wonder. She trailed off. We stood frozen for a second before my mother got over her shock. We had better go, she said. Everyone is waiting. The trip down to the clearing didn't take long, and a huge bonfire was already packed for tonight's proceedings. A small stage was set up a couple of feet away from the bonfire. The stage wasn't big, but it was set up just high enough so that the pack members could see who was on stage. Are you ready, girl? Kia asked. Her presence had become more noticeable. I'm nervous, I answered truthfully. Don't be, she said. When the moon reaches its peak, I will take over, and we will have our first shift. There is nothing to worry about. She tried to reassure me. Yet I had a feeling that something was off, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. Will it hurt? I eventually asked, hoping it was because of the shifting that I felt so nervous. The shifting? She asked. Yeah? I have heard stories of wolves who were stuck in their transformation for hours, whimpering out of agony. The first shift is always the worst, she answered. But the more we do it, the easier it will get. Brian pulled me closer, and his arm snaked around my waist. He must have noticed my worry. He gave me a look of knowing, yet he didn't say anything. He had his first shift a couple of months ago, and I remember that he whimpered at the beginning. Relax, Brian said as we got closer. I will stay by your side, he promised, and don't worry, it will be over before you know it. I said, unable to form any proper words. It only hurts for a few minutes, he continued and dropped his gaze towards me. That's until the process is complete. Bloody hell, as soon as we reached the bonfire, my heart started to pound out of control in my chest. I felt nauseous, and fear rose in me. Alpha, Luna, Ranks, pack members, and pups, we welcome you all to Alpha's daughter's shift. Beta Harold Scott, my father's beta and best friend, announced from the stage, and the pack members went wild and howled into the quiet night, welcoming me to adulthood. I moved my gaze over to the gray-headed man's features who was making the announcement. Only love and respect could be read in his chocolate-brown eyes. My heart warmed when his gaze fell on me, and I resisted the urge to go to his side. Beta Harold was like a second father to me, and he is Brian's father. My father walked over to the stage, climbed the few steps, and met Harold on stage. Congratulations, Alpha, Beta Harold said, and the two men shook hands before my father turned toward the pack. Evening, everyone, my father started. As everyone knows, my daughter Catherine has reached the legal age of 17, which will allow her to shift for the first time and maybe meet her mate. My father became silent for a few seconds before he continued. My apologies, my father announced. My daughter has already found her mate. Everyone turned their gaze toward me and rejoiced. I turned crimson while Brian was standing next to me like a cat who had just received a big bowl of cream. My father came down the stage and handed me a torch to light the bonfire. It was a custom in our pack that when an Alpha's pup came of age, he or she would light a bonfire as a sign that the new generation of Ranks would be taking over soon. With this torch, we welcome the soon-to-be Alpha and Luna to the pack, my father announced. I walked toward the bonfire and dropped the torch on the stack of wood, and the bonfire sprang to life. Wow! Brian gasped next to my side, and I turned to look at what he was seeing. My gaze ended on the bonfire and the flames creating images of different wolves moving in the flames. A pair of young wolves came to the front. They looked like mates and seemed to look happy. Then they were ripped apart, leaving the she-wolf heartbroken. The images in the flames suddenly changed to a more hostile atmosphere, and I couldn't help but notice that some of the wolves looked sad, disappointed, and distant. All these wolves vanished into the flames, turning their backs on the heartbroken she-wolf. The she-wolf looked lonely and sad, but something about her tickled my interest. A new set of images appeared in the flames, burning brighter than any of the other images. 3 huge wolves walked out of the flames, intensive power and dominance radiating from them. They must be alphas. They stood there looking at the she-wolf with so much care, and the most dominant wolf between the 3 wolves' gaze turned to the lonely and sad she-wolf. A warm, fuzzy feeling of unconditional love moved through me, and I wondered what it meant. The images changed again with a warning of war coming, and the 3 wolves protected the lonely she-wolf. My father came and stood next to me and placed his hand on my shoulder as the images in the flames disappeared. "The goddess has sent you a message," my father whispered. A soft smile appeared on my father's lips. "It is believed that only the most powerful wolves walking on this earth would be able to communicate and receive warnings from the goddess herself," he said. "Yes," I answered, "that I understand, but what does the images mean?" "I can't tell you," he answered, smiling. Before I could ask my next question, my father's face became blank, and I knew he must be busy linking someone. When his gaze turned back to normal, horror and worry crossed his eyes. "We are under attack," he roared. Catherine's POV. "Get all the she-wolves and children to safety." Beta Harold roared out his order to the warriors. My father gave my mother a quick kiss and handed her over to one of the senior warriors. "Keep your Luna safe," he orders the big wolf. "Yes, Alpha," the warrior answered, and my father and his beta shifted into their wolves, running off toward the fight. "Go with your mom," Brian ordered me. "I can't," I argue, "not until I shift." I couldn't risk shifting between innocent pack members. If something ticked Kia off, it could create chaos and someone might get hurt. "Then you need to find a safe place to hide," he told me as he readied himself to shift. "Brian," I argued, "this is my home and pack. I am trained well enough to help and fight." He sighed and walked back to me, pulling me in, and his hand tenderly moved to my face. "What if you start to shift while in the fight?" he asked, finding my gaze. Worry for my safety was written in his eyes. "I can't risk it," he said, shaking his head and pleading. "I will know when it's time to shift," I argued. "Look, we still have plenty of time until my shift." I gestured to the moon, hanging low over the mountains. "Kia will tell me to leave when the time has come. I will then find a safe place." Brian shook his head. He knew it was a hopeless case to argue with me. I wouldn't listen, and I would protect my pack. "Fine." Brian gave in and shifted into his brown wolf, then gestured to me to get on. It wasn't the first time that I would take a ride on his wolf's back, yet it would be the first time as fated mates. Brian's wolf, Haiti, lowered himself for me to get on, and I swung my legs over the huge beast's back. Haiti purred as soon as I sat down on his back, and the vibration of his purrs sent a warm feeling directly to my core. "Fuck!" I internally growled. It is going to be hard to concentrate. "Hold on tight," Brian ordered over the mind link, and I nodded my head, intoxicated. Haiti got to his feet and started toward the northern boundary where the rogues had entered. I got lost in Brian's intoxicating scent and became more and more conscious of the sparks moving between us wherever my bare skin touched. Oh, goddess, this is heaven. I shivered, getting drunk on nothing except his scent. I swallowed hard, shaking my head, trying to concentrate. "Are you all right?" Brian asked seriously. I'm fine," I whispered. "Nothing to worry about." "Fuck!" I sighed, feeling my senses were being overridden by the mate's bond. My mind wandered off, and I suddenly wondered if this is what the mate bond feels like. How will it feel when we take the big step and mate? We hadn't taken the step. We wanted to save ourselves for our fated mate. Will it be just as electrifying and poisonous to our senses? Will we get lost and forget about anyone and everything while we do the deed? Will we be lost in our small little world where only Brian and I matter and fuck one another's brains out? Will it smell like smoke? I shook my head, irritated. Smoke? Really? I shook my head a few times, unable to get rid of the smell. That's when I noticed the huge angry flames coming from our right. "Brian, the pack house!" I yelled out, terrified. "It is on fire. My mother." Haiti turned his massive head and his eyes widened. He didn't hesitate, changed direction, and ran towards the pack house. Just as we came down through the thick forest, the pack house came into view. "We are almost there." Brian mind-linked. Haiti pushed faster, and just as we reached the edge of the forest, a force knocked us from the side, sending me flying into a nearby bush. What the hell just happened? I gasped as my hand reached my head. I got to my feet, feeling a bit disoriented, but shook it off as a slight concussion. Aggressive and threatening snarls with an angry snapping of jaws disturbed the silent forest. Shh! Brian! I need to help Brian. I can't lose my mate. I ran toward the sound and pushed through the bush, not caring for the cuts and scrapes. Those will heal by tomorrow. I found Brian standing in a defensive stance, his posture aggressive and every hair on his back standing horizontal. 5 rogue wolves were snapping their jaws at him, yet with every attack, Brian blocked them off with ease. One of the rogue wolves lifted his muzzle and sniffed the air, then turned his massive head toward me, and for a second, it looked as if the wolf smiled. Brian must have noticed something had changed, and he turned his head in my direction. "Kate! Run!" Brian yelled over the mind link. "What about?" I tried to argue, but he cut me off. "Run!" he ordered again, this time with fear. "Kate, run!" 4 wolves pounced on Brian, tackling Haiti to the ground, yet Brian's wolves didn't shy away from the fight. Brian was trained by the best and was able to dispatch one of the rogues with the first blow. Brian and I started training at the age of 5, and because Brian is a few months older than I, he had already started his wolf training. The 5th wolf watched the 4 wolves take on Brian, then his gaze snapped back at me, and an evil sneer followed on the wolf's lips. He started forward slowly, stalking me like I was prey. I sized up the rusty wolf, knowing I would be able to put up a decent fight and maybe be able to kill him in my human form. The wolf wasn't very large, yet something about him bothered me, and a cold chill suddenly ran down my spine when I spotted balls of white foam dripping from the sides of his mouth. "Rabid rogues?" I whispered to myself as I stepped backward. The wolves stalked forward and walked into an open area where the moonlight shone through. I gasped out in horror when I saw his deadly red eyes glittering in the light. "Fuck!" I swore under my breath. "This can't be good. This wasn't just a normal rogue attack. They must have been sent here to destroy us. But why?" I slowly took another few steps back, keeping the wolf in my sight, and as soon as I stepped over a huge stump, I turned around and ran as fast as I possibly could. The soft thumping sound of the wolf's paws followed behind me, yet the wolf didn't make a sound or even try to knock me off my feet. Was he just following me? Was there something he wanted? I turned my head to look back, confirming that the wolf was still following me and was gaining ground. The pack house came into sight and increased my speed, and seconds later an aggressive snarl startled me. I turned my gaze, searching for the owner, and was knocked off my feet. I turned over, trying to raise myself from the ground, but the rusty wolf jumped against my chest, pushing me down. I tried to fight and push him off, but it was no use. He seemed much stronger than me. "Kia!" I yelled. "A bit of help would be appreciated." The wolf dropped his head, pinning me with his gaze, and similar images of wolves' fire's flames crossed his eyes. What the fuck was going on? Before I could get an answer, I got sucked into the unknown and was lost in the rogue's blood-stained eyes, feeling cold and alone. A deep, furious roar broke the connection, and the wolf who pinned me down was knocked from the top of me and thrown against a tree, breaking the tree in half. I got upright as the massive brown wolf came flying past me, soaked in blood. My eyes widened, not recognizing the wolf, and I scattered backward, afraid. "Kate," Brian's voice echoed in my mind. "Get the woman and children out of the pack house and to safety. I will make sure this one doesn't survive." "Oh, okay," I stuttered and forced my body to move. I ran as fast as I could towards the pack house, finding the north side up in flames. A she-wolf saw me and ran to me. She panicked, and horror froze on her face. "Kate," she whimpered in fear, "the pups are still in there." Catherine's POV. "Kate, no!" Brian roared over the mind link as he saw me sprinting into the blazing pack house. I was not going to let the pups die. I dashed towards the stairs as balls of black smoke poured in. I hurried up the steps as fast as I could, covering my nose and mouth. The second set of stairs appeared to be smoke-free, but as I stepped around the bench, raging red flames greeted me, and I took a step back, feeling the burning heat roll down the hallway. Fuck! My pulse raced as I swore the pups' nursery was on the 3rd floor. I might reach them, but I will not be able to bring them down this way. Think, Kate. Think. You better be moving, Kia urged. The moon has almost reached its peak, shifting here. Will have us killed. I cut her off and climbed the stairs toward the 3rd floor, rushing down the silent hallway. The silence on the floor was intimidating, yet I ignored it and ran toward the nursery. Whimpering and crying came from inside the room, and I sighed in relief as I opened the door, finding the pups alive and still safe. Thank the goddess, I said, picking up the first pup from his cot and setting him down next to me. 12 small faces looked at me with tears running down their faces. They are scared shitless. My heart pinched as I panicked to find a plan to get them out of the nursery safely. What do I do now? I whispered to myself, seeking a way out that would be safe enough for all of them. My gaze moved from side to side, yet I just couldn't find a safe enough place. Windows, Kia commented, and my gaze snapped toward the window. Yeah, I growled. I will not be able to move 12 pups at once. True, she answered, and I sensed she was rolling her eyes at me. Tell your father you will be dropping the pups from the window. They should stand ready to catch them below. Are you insane? I gasped, bewildered at her idea. Do you have a better plan? She growled. We don't have much time. We are about to take form. I shook my head. There was no other way around it, so I gave in and did what she suggested. I mind-linked with my father and explained what I was about to do, then opened the window. The full moon was shining high, lighting the surroundings below. I looked down, flinched at the height, and felt a knot in my throat. I was afraid for the pups' sake. A pack member spotted me and gestured to the window, and a group of wolves ran closer. Kate, my father yelled, looking worried. Is everyone still okay? Yeah, Dad, I answered, screaming against the wind. They are just frightened. Are you guys ready? Yes, you can drop the first pup, Beta Harold yelled from below. He had a group of wolves holding a blanket in their hands, ready. I turned to the pups and picked up the first one, and as I held him, I walked toward the window. Okay, little ones, I said. The only way we can escape the fire is through the window. There is a group below that is going to catch you, okay? I told them. Kate, we are scared, a little blonde girl said, and I pulled her to me. Her blue eyes were full of tears, and she shivered out of fear. I know, little one, I said, lifting her gaze to look at me. So am I. But this is the only way out. Okay, they will catch you and you will be safe. She nodded her head, and I turned to the window with the little pup in my arms. Drop the first pup, Beta Harold yelled, and I climbed on the windowsill, shifting my leg over as I held the pup. Don't look down, I told him, and he nodded his small head, crying out of fear. Shh, little one, it will be okay, I said as I bent over and stretched my arms out. Oh, goddess, protect them, I whispered, closed my eyes, and let go. He screamed, yet the scream died a second later. Pack members cheered, clapped, and howled. It seems to work. Kate, my father yelled, sounding relieved. Drop the next one. I did as he said, going as fast as I could. Thank the goddess, the pups were aged between 2 and 5. If they were smaller, I wouldn't have been able to drop them. By the 7th pup, the pain hit my body, and I whimpered out of agony, and my eyes snapped toward the moon. It was about time. Kate, are you okay? A little boy came to ask. He was the older one who can sense something was happening. I'm fine, I stuttered. Come on, it is your turn. Kia. I yelled out in desperation. Let it stop. I can't, girl, she whimpered, worried. Do something then, please. I can't let them die. I cried out in desperation. I will try and delay the process. She gave in, worry laced in her voice. Thanks, I said, biting down hard on my jaw, fighting against the pain. I moved my attention back to the task at hand, took the next pup in my arms, and dropped him to safety. Kate, Brian yelled from below. He had shifted back and was helping to catch the pups. Are you okay? I shook my head. You will need to catch them quicker, I yelled and whimpered in pain. I am about to shift. Worried gasps sounded from below. They knew what would happen if I shifted while I was still inside the pack house. Besides that, my shifting might endanger the pups' lives. My legs gave in, and I crawled to the next pup, grabbed her in my arms, and sailed back to the window. Then I set her down and pushed my body upright against the window. I grabbed her by the arm, lifted her, and set her on the windowsill. At least the girl was a bit older, and she could understand. I need you to jump, okay? I told her gently. Tears streamed down her pretty face, yet she nodded her head as fear crossed her eyes. I will count to 3, I told her. Okay, she whispered as I held her body. 1, I started. 2, she shivered. 3. I let go and pushed her over. Her screams died a second later, and a smile appeared on my lips. I could hear her crying, with her mother calming her down. The 2 pups that were left with me got closer. The eldest of the 2 just nodded his head and went to the windowsill. He smiled at me, even though he was scared, and took my hand. You are such a brave little man, I said. Come, Johnny, he called to his brother. I helped little Johnny onto the windowsill, next to his brother. Pain hit me from the side, and I moaned out of agony. Go, I said, trying hard not to show them how much pain I was in. The eldest of the 2 boys pushed his brother out the window, and seconds later he turned and waved at me before he jumped as well. Kate! My father yelled, and I pushed myself up against the window to push my head out the window. You need to jump as well, my father urged. Urge! I moaned, sinking back to the floor. The smell of smoke hit my nostrils, and the room started to heat up. As the flames burned the outside wall, the only way out was by the window. Thick clouds of smoke pushed from below the door, making me gasp for air and cough. I can't delay it anymore. Kia whimpered, and I could feel how she struggled to hold on. My body started to twist and turn, leaving me in excruciating pain. Oh, goddess, I whimpered. What have I done? The sound of bones breaking sounded in the small room, and a scream of agony left my lips. I was in so much pain that I couldn't lift my head. The heat under the floor was adding to my discomfort, making my first shift even worse. I need to get out of her. I coughed out against the smoke and lifted my head, or I will burn and suffocate to death. I tried to move, yet it was still impossible. My bones were moving into position. Kia, I yelled, help me get to the window. But we will die if we stay here. Catherine's POV. Kia gave me control, and even though I could barely move, I managed to pull myself up against the windowsill. I forced my body into a sitting position, seeing my hands change into claws. When the next set of pain hit my body went limp, and I tilted backward, feeling weightless as I fell from the 3rd floor. I ignored the unpleasant beeping sound that resonated around me. Even though it drove me mad at first, I have become acclimated to the sound. I had been in and out of consciousness for the past few days and had no idea what time it was. I groaned as my mind wandered off into the unknown once more. I had tried numerous times to fight sleep, but it was futile. My body and mind were in desperate need of rest, and the more I battled it, the more fatigued I felt. Kia's presence was present, but I had no idea what she or we looked like in our beast forms. Have I ever completed the shift? The most excruciating pain rippled through my chest, cutting off my breath, and I gasped for air. My mind went into overdrive as the pain in my chest increased. I yelled out in agony, forcing my eyes open. I was greeted by a blinding white light from above me, and I desperately blinked against the light. Arr! I cried out, feeling the pain increase, and I forced my tired body into a sitting position, and my hands flew to my chest. What the fuck was happening to me? I whimpered out in agony, Am I having a heart attack? Miss Kate, a worried, husky voice said from a few feet away, startling me. I lifted my gaze through the pain, seeing a blurry figure in a white coat standing at the door. I assume it is a doctor. I see you are awake, he said. I moaned again, panting for breath, and the figure rushed closer to me. Are you all right? He asked, concerned. Pain, I stuttered with a moan. What's happening to me? His eyes widened in shock, hesitating next to the bed. I'll be right back, he said, and he rushed out the door. The painful feeling slowly lifted from my chest, giving me room to breathe, and I lay back in bed. What the hell was that? I have never been in so much pain. My gaze moved over the simple infirmary room, and a faint scent of my family lingered in the air. A smile touched the corners of my lips, knowing that my family had visited me. Why was the doctor taking so long? I sighed frustratedly and swung my legs over the bed. I never had much patience. I better find out what's going on. I moaned under my breath and pushed my body off the bed. I yelled out in surprise as my legs gave in under me, and I landed on the floor, bumping my head against the bed frame. What the? My eyes grew wide out of fear as I realized my legs didn't seem to be working. A nurse entered the room in a hurry. She probably heard my yell and fell, her eyes wide, when she spotted me sitting between the bed and the wall. "Miss Kate!" she yelled, concerned, and rushed to my side, grabbing my arms as she tried to lift me back onto the bed. It was no use. My legs seemed to not be able to carry my weight. "What's going on?" The doctor's voice sounded from the door, and my eyes snapped toward him in fear. I can't get up," I cried out in fear. "My legs!" The doctor rushed to the nurse's side, and both found a way to lift me from the floor and help me onto the bed. The nurse tucked me in and gave me a sad smile. "I will go get you something to eat and drink," she said, leaving me with the doctor. Tears were now freely working their way down my face, and my emotions and mind were working against one another. My emotions won the round, and I started to sob, feeling confused, sad, hurt, afraid, and scared. What will I do now? Will the pack be able to accept my disability? Will the members still see me as me? Will they reject and abandon me? Will I still be able to do the same things as before without my legs? I couldn't walk anymore. I will now be seen as half a person and half a wolf. I will be a liability, a weak link in the pack. Kate, the good old doctor, tried to get my attention and, in the process, took my hand. The doctor took a deep breath next to me before he continued. "Disability might be the result of your fall. You have been in a coma for some time, and we were not able to establish how severe the damage to your brain was until you were awake." My gaze slowly moved toward the doctor. I have known him my whole life, and he has never lied to me. Yet he sounded more worried about something else than the actual words he spoke, like there was a hidden message behind his words and emotions. Was he withholding or hiding something from me? I sought the doctor's eyes, reading the concern in his warm, chocolate-brown eyes. "Why you?" I stuttered through the tears. "Said I was in a coma?" I swallowed hard and took a deep breath. My mind was racing at 100 miles per hour. I had so many questions and so few answers. How was any of this real? I must be dreaming. The doctor nodded his head, confirming what I had just heard was true. "How long?" I spit the words through the tears. He sighed, and I got the feeling that he was hoping I wouldn't have asked the question. "Almost 8 months," he answered after a moment of silence, and my eyes widened out of shock. The doctor squeezed my hand, trying hard to comfort me. 8 months. I have lost 8 months of my life. 8 fucking months. A set of uncontrollable sobs rippled through my body as my emotions spiraled out of control. Why? Why was I punished like that? What have I done to deserve this? I couldn't wrap my mind around the facts of being in a coma for 8 months and not being able to walk again. "I will give you a moment to get your emotions under control. I understand that it's a lot to process, and I can't imagine what you are going through," the doctor said, turning to leave. "In the meantime, I will let Alpha and Luna know that you have awakened." I nodded my head in acknowledgement, and the good old doctor left. I don't know how long I was crying, but my tears dried up. I felt tired, emotionally drained, and broken, but never in my life have I expected that this was only the start of being broken beyond repair. What will happen next? Catherine's POV. Kate! My mother's voice filled the air around me, and my gaze moved to where she stood at the door. "Mother?" I said tiredly, and she took a few steps toward my bed. Her swollen belly was now back to her fit and firm stomach, and she looked just as beautiful as I remembered. "How are you feeling?" my mother asked, freaking out and taking my temperature. She moved her gaze over my body, searching for anything out of place. "Under the circumstances," I answered, feeling new tears burning behind my eyelids. "I am fine." I forced the tears back and swallowed hard. I have decided not to show any emotion concerning my disability. I will pretend that everything is still okay, and I will find a way to walk again. I will never give up. "The doctor called and told me you are awake," she said, searching my gaze. "Oh, Kate, we were so worried." My mother took a seat next to the bed, and my gaze moved to her face. A small smile followed my lips. I knew my mother was one person who visited me regularly. Her scent was the most dominant one in the room. Yet there was a second scent that smelled familiar, yet it smelled like the scent had changed in some way and was still lingering in the room. I was interested to know who it belonged to. I took a whiff of the other scents, and to my surprise, Brian's was almost non-existent. Did something happen to him? I shook the thought off and focused on my mother. "Where is Dad?" I asked, wondering why he didn't come with my mother. "In urgent alpha meetings," she answered, worried. "We have had regular rogue attacks after." My mother became quiet, and agony reflected in her eyes. "My accident?" I asked, and she nodded her head. "I am sorry, Kate," she said and stared into nothing. "The warriors tried their best, but they were too late." I finished her thoughts. She slowly nodded her head and wiped a stray tear from her eyes. "Did she see it happening? We thought we had lost you. You looked so broken. They never caught me on time when I toppled out of the window. Then why did I survive? I should be dead." "Did Kia fix me? Did she mend my broken bones and put me back together?" Images of that night flashed before my eyes and I shivered, remembering how close I came to dying. The heat of the fire was unbearable, and the smoke was burning my eyes and making it hard to breathe. I remember losing control when Kia couldn't delay the shift anymore and the excruciating pain that rippled through my body as I started to shift. My body gave in, and... Did someone look at what my wolf looked like? I focused on Kia for a few seconds, but she was hiding in the depths of my mind. I could feel her emotions. She felt depressed, angry, and hurt. Why was she hiding? Why was she depressed and angry? Why did she feel hurt? "Kia," I called, hoping she would respond. Yet she ignored my call, and the feeling of being betrayed enveloped my mind. "Kia," I called again. No answer. I sighed. I guess Kia wasn't ready to talk to me yet. I shook the thoughts and feelings off and turned my attention back to my mother. "It's okay," I said, trying to cheer her up, and I squeezed her hand. "I am here now and things will go back to normal." "Yes," she said, nodding her head, yet concern was still written in her eyes. "So, tell me," I tried to change the subject. "How is everyone? Did I have another brother or a little sister?" I asked, trying to sound excited. A soft smile followed my mother's lips. "Jimmy is fine," she said, smiling. "You wouldn't recognize him when he comes to see you, and Ellie is beautiful. She has this chubby little face, golden hair, and a smile that will light your gloomy day. She is something special, and you will love her to bits." Ellie, the name rolled over my tongue, and I lay back on the bed. I have a little sister I haven't met, and she is around 8 months old. My heart ached in my chest. I have missed so much of my family's life. I have missed the birth of my little sister and seeing her grow. I remember how excited I was and how I couldn't wait for my sister's arrival. I wanted to play the big sister part and be there for the actual birth. Tears burned behind my eyes again. I felt like a total failure. I have failed my little sister Ellie in so many ways that it has burned my insides. How will I ever be able to play hide and seek with her? Or run around and jump in the pool? I will never be able to help her get dressed and do her hair and makeup. The fact that I would never be able to walk again was slowly starting to eat me from the inside. "Kate, are you all right?" my mother asked. I shook my head, breaking down. "Everything is just a bit too much," I answered through sobs. "All will be fine," she said as she lifted herself from the chair and pulled me into a hug, her hands rubbing my back. "Thanks, Mom," I said as soon as I got my sobs under control and put a brave smile on my face. "Will you bring Ellie for me to meet?" I asked. I still wanted to meet the little pup. She was my blood after all. "I will tell Jimmy to bring her here," my mother said. "Why do I have a feeling that Mom forbade Jimmy to visit me?" I asked. My mom shifted nervously and got up. "Jimmy didn't take your accident very well, and..." She paused. "Oh, heavens, Kate!" My father's voice startled me as I walked to my mother's side. "I am so relieved you are awake." My father bent down and gave me a bone-crushing hug. "Hi, Dad," I said as soon as he let me go. "So, how are you feeling?" he asked and gave my mother a look. "Fine," I said, moving my gaze between the two. My mother had become uncomfortable and was nervously fiddling with the hem of her blouse. My father, even though looking glad that I was awake and well, both of them were keeping a secret. I gave them both a questionable look, lifting one of my eyebrows. "Mom?" I asked, and she slowly lifted her gaze. "What happened?" Catherine's POV. The doctor came in, followed by the nurse with a plate of warm food. "Alpha Luna," he greeted my parents. My folks gave him a nod of the head and moved out of the way to let the doctor pass to get to me. He took some blood and checked my vitals. I have spoken to a doctor in town, the doctor started, and my father's face turned confused. And, I asked, he is willing to see you tomorrow to see if he can help you, he answered. What is this about? My father roared and moved his gaze, bewildered, between the two of us. I guess the old doctor didn't inform my parents of my disability yet. I can't walk, I can't move my legs, I answered, and my father's gaze snapped toward the doctor. What is Kate talking about? He asked, and his face became red out of anger. It wasn't the doctor's fault. He didn't do this to me. Miss Kate seemed to have lost the ability to use her legs, the doctor answered. How? My father asked and sank into the chair. He was taking it worse than I was. I believe it is because of the fall, the doctor answered. My father sighed defeatedly and shook his head in disbelief. What are we going to do now? My mother asked. She was quietly sitting and listening to the conversation, not saying a word. As I said, the doctor replied calmly, I have made an appointment with a doctor in town. He might find something I missed. He might help Kate or send us in the right direction. I thanked the doctor, and he left, and from the moment I woke up, I felt a little bit better. The doctor might be able to help me, and I might just be able to walk again. So how are things? I asked, trying to make conversation. I had missed so much that I needed to know what was happening. Mom said that there were a few rogue attacks the last couple of months. My father didn't answer me, and I tried to get his attention. Dad? Oh, sorry, he said, shaking his head. I am still in shock. I know it is a lot to process, I said and reached out, but we will get through it. I know, he answered and gave me a small smile. What did you ask again? The rogue attacks, I repeated. Yes, he answered. It's weird. The other alphas state that they don't have any attacks on their borders. The rogues have just come in and searched. It's not like when the pack house went up in flames. Did you find out who set the pack house on fire? I wanted to know. It seems like it was an electric fault, he answered, but the rogues weren't responsible. That's odd, I answered. In which part of the pack did it start? In the kitchen. I scrunched my eyebrows together, yet I didn't ask any more questions about the fire. Tell me, Father, is Brian still around? I asked, and my father froze. Will you please inform Brian and Sarah that I am awake? He slowly turned toward me and nodded his head, then got up, and both my parents left without saying another word. I must have dozed off, but a small knock on the door startled me awake. Sarah peeked her head around the door, her strawberry blonde hair surrounding her face. Hi, I said and waved her in. She hesitated at the door, unsure if she should enter or not. Why was everyone so cautious around me? Sarah sighed, and I shifted my head to the side, reading her. She was hiding something? Another breath escaped her lips, and she closed her eyes before she stepped into the doorway. Her scent hit me first, and I recognized the smell as a different scent. No, it can't be, can it? My gaze moved down her body, seeing her holding her pregnancy bump. You are pregnant? I gasped out in surprise, and excitement took over. My best friend was going to have a baby. She nodded her head and opened her eyes. Congratulations, I yelled out excitedly. Thanks, she said, ignoring my gaze as she walked in. Why wasn't she returning the excitement? Was it because of her hormones? Didn't she want the pup? I guess you found your mate. Who is he? Can I meet him? I tossed questions at her. Sarah stood nervously next to me, moving her weight from one leg to the other, a habit of hers telling me she was nervous and unsure how I would react. Her face was blank, but her green eyes screamed answers that she didn't want me to know. What happened? I asked, concerned when she didn't say a word. Kate. My gaze snapped towards the door where a man stood, his gaze pinned on Sarah and then moving towards me. Brian, I gasped the second his scent hit my nose. He had changed a lot and was unrecognizable. His short, blonde hair was now replaced with long hair. He had a short, trimmed beard and a scar crossing his right eye. He slowly entered the room and came around from the other side of the bed. He bent down and kissed me on the forehead. Sparks erupted at his touch, and I shivered where I sat. Brian came upright and took a step away from the bed, his gaze returning to Sarah. The atmosphere became stiff around me, and I moved my gaze between my mate and best friend, confused. Then it hit me as if a bucket of ice water was dumped over my head. Sarah's new scent carried a similar smell to my mate's. "Tell me it is not true." I broke the silence in the room. Kia whimpered from the back of my mind, confirming my suspension. "Kate," Brian started, and Sarah's gaze snapped at him. "It was an accident." "An accident?" Sarah growled at him. "We have been seeing one another for a while," I finished her thoughts. "How?" Brian gasped out, bewildered. "I felt it," I growled at him. "You fucked her earlier today and it woke me up." "We haven't." Sarah's eyes grew wide and her face turned red, "You are cheating on me?" she asked. "Come on, Sarah," Brian argued. "You are due any time soon. I still have needs, and you are not capable of fulfilling those needs now." For a second, I was happy about their fight. That was until I realized that my fated mate was going around screwing whatever she-wolf was available. Would he have done that to me as well when I fell pregnant? "Enough," I growled fiercely. "Get out, the both of you." But, Brian tried to argue. "No, Brian," I growled. "You have shown me what kind of mate you are. Kate, you have been in a coma. No one could tell me for how long. Should I have waited?" he asked. "Yes," I answered. "We made a promise that we would wait. You have betrayed me, and now you are screwing around while you have a she-wolf pregnant." Sarah's gaze snapped back toward me. She had never seen me this angry. "In that case," Brian growled at me, "I, Brian Joseph Scott, future beta from the Silver Moonstone Pack, reject you, Catherine Jones, as my mate." "I accept," I growled, feeling the pain of rejection rippling through my body. I gasped for air, yet, I knew the bond breaking would leave me in pain. I was more hurt that Brian didn't fight for me. I scrunched back into the hospital bed, closing my eyes as I watched the bond's last thread snapping like it was nothing. All those years we have been together meant nothing to him. Meant nothing to me anymore. Brian gasped out of breath and dropped to his knees. He yelled out in agony, yet I only watched him. 8 months ago, I would have fought with him and for him. Now, I felt nothing. Kate! He moaned my name, looking for help. Haiti must be fighting him for control. "Leave now, before Haiti takes over," I warned him. "I will not change my mind." Brian got to his feet and ran out of my room as he howled, feeling the pain of the bond breaking on his side. 18 months later, Catherine's POV. "Have you arrived safely?" Jeremy's excited voice sounded over the receiver. "I did," I answered, feeling the same excitement bubble up inside me. "I haven't been home for some time, and I couldn't wait to see my family, especially Jeremy and Ellie." "I assume you had a good flight?" he then asked. I knew Jeremy was only having a conversation, and I didn't mind. "Yes," I answered, "the flight wasn't that bad." "That's good news," he said. "What time could we expect you?" "Well, I'm disembarking the plane now," I answered. "Then I'll have a quick stop at Latino's for lunch, and then there will be another 45 minutes or so before I arrive home." Jeremy became silent on the other side of the line before he spoke again. Our relationship had grown and was now stronger than ever. The night Brian rejected me, Jimmy came in moments later. They all knew about Brian's infidelity. Jimmy was the one who discovered it, and because my father couldn't do anything about it while I was in a coma, Jimmy acted out. I was surprised at all the innovative things he could do, but we had a good and proper talk about it, and he promised me that he would never go out and make anyone's life miserable. "I'll meet you at Latino's," he said. "Father is not going to let you drive," I warned him. "Who said I was driving?" he chuckled, amused. "Are you planning to run?" I asked. Latino's was situated in the heart of the city, and it was quite a distance to run. "Yeah," he said, getting more excited by the second. "I can't wait to see you." I shook my head at his silliness. "That's until you had enough of me." "Never," he playfully barked. "If I could keep you home, I would." "Okay, I need to go," I said, seeing my driver coming closer. "I will see you soon." I cut the call before Jeremy could say anything more and waved for my driver to come closer and help me from the plane. The drive to Latino's wasn't a very long one, and soon I took my seat at my reserved table. Raven, my driver, excused himself to take a call, leaving me at my table. It didn't take the staff long to notice me, and they called the owner, Carlo, to come and greet me. "Oh, Miss Kate," the huge wolf smiled. "We are so happy to see you. How are things?" Carlo was a big guy, standing at 6'8". He had short, pitch-black hair, sparkling blue eyes, and he had laughing wrinkles around his eyes. He opened Latinos about 10 years ago in the heart of the only human town that was centered between 10 different pack territories. Carlo didn't belong to any of the packs around here and had no interest in becoming a pack member as well, yet he had signed an alliance with every alpha in the area. I guess it had to do with his big, fat, friendly personality. As time went by, we regularly visited the cozy restaurant, and later it became a monthly routine to drive down to Latinos and have some decent Italian food there. We all loved coming here, and the food was fantastic. My mother knew that I wouldn't miss the opportunity to stop here first before I returned home. Thus, she made sure I had a reservation and apologized that my parents couldn't make it. "All fine," I answered. "And here?" "How is business?" "You know wolves, they always come hungry," he laughed. "And you? Have the doctors made any progress on your diagnosis?" I shook my head, a bit bitter. "No, I am still stuck with the same diagnosis. There is nothing physically wrong with me," I answered sourly. It's been 18 months since I woke up unable to use my legs and bound to a wheelchair. The funny thing was that I still had feelings in my legs, which, according to the doctors, was a good thing. I have visited every doctor possible in this area, and all of them came to the same conclusion. Nothing physically was wrong with me. It was all in my head. I sighed. My father sent me to Switzerland to do rehabilitation there, hoping for a miracle to be able to walk. Yet, after staying there for a year, I had enough and decided to return home to my family. I had already missed so much that it didn't matter to me that I was now bound to a wheelchair. My upper body was strong enough to get me where I wanted to be and help myself. Yes, it was a pain in the ass to rely on others, but I soon learned that it was now part of me, and the only way to survive was not to be stuck in that negative mode. "That is such a shame," Carlo answered, and I nodded my head. "So who is the lucky waiter to serve me today?" I asked, and Carlo's face changed. He found the question hilarious and burst out laughing. He knew exactly where I was going with this. "Sammy," he eventually answered through tears. "What did they do?" I couldn't help but ask. "They drew straws in the kitchen a few nights ago when the staff heard you were coming. Sammy won. The girls were disappointed. They believe he cheated." I couldn't help but laugh at their silliness. "Well, Miss Kate, I will love you and leave you for now to attend to my other guests," he said, waving at Sammy to come closer. "I will speak to you soon." With that, Carlo gave me a nod of his head and left. Sammy walked closer with a broad smile. "Hi, Miss Kate." The young man with the lightest blue eyes said, smiling, "Welcome back." "Thank you." I returned the smile. "So what are we having today?" he asked and pulled his writing pad and pen out. "I guess I am in the mood for—" I pulled the menu from me, reading through the first few kinds of pasta. "You're famous." "Mine, mate?" A loud and clear, husky voice called from the door. The single word and intensity of the claim sent shivers down my spine. Yet I ignored it and continued with my order. "Alfredo?" I answered. "And maybe I would like to have—" "Mate!" A second, husky voice like the previous one echoed through the busy restaurant, breaking my chain of thought. I turned my head confusedly towards Sammy, seeing him not uttering a word or even helping me to choose. What was up with him? Rude. That has never happened before, yet I ignored him and focused on the menus. "Ah," I said when I found what I was looking for and lifted my finger into the air, "I would like to have some." "Mate!" A third voice came even huskier and louder than any of the others. The dominance and intensity of it were so potent that Kia stirred in my mind. I can't ignore it anymore. The husky voice was pure bliss for my soul. I lifted my gaze to see whom the voice belonged to, finding 3 wolves' gazes pinned on me. "Oh no," the words escaped my lips. "Not again." Catherine's POV. I froze in my seat, and images of my second rejection crossed my mind. I met Alpha Ethan in a restaurant, like Latinos in Switzerland. He was the next-in-line alpha of the Red Moon Pack and was one hell of a handsome wolf. When he walked into the small Italian restaurant, power radiated from him. He was with a group of wolves, mainly she-wolves and warriors. I immediately knew he was my second chance mate, and excitement bubbled up inside me that the goddess had blessed me with a second chance at happiness. For a moment, I sat back and just admired the beautiful man, and I secretly allowed his scent of grasslands to envelop me. His scent was so intoxicating that my body reacted in ways I never thought possible, and my mind wandered off, imagining how my hands would roam over his perfectly sculptured body. He lifted his nose to the air, took a whiff of the air, and a sense of excitement crossed his eyes before they shifted black. His wolf must be on the surface, and in a matter of minutes, if not seconds, he would be able to sniff me out. His gaze slowly moved over the small restaurant area in search of me. A smile played at the corner of my lips as I secretly watched him take a step away from the group. His eyebrows scrunched together, looking a bit frustrated and confused, yet when he found me sitting at the back of the restaurant, hiding behind a menu, he shifted his head to the side and gave me a curious look. A small smile reached his lips, and my heart leaped out of my chest. Man, his smile would light up any girl's day. Ethan excused himself from the group and slowly moved toward my table. He didn't move his gaze from me, and it made me think that he was scared that I would disappear if he blinked. When the 6'2" tall, handsome man stopped at my table, I openly gawked. "Like what you see, mate?" he asked, giving me a cocky smile. He looked happy to have found me, and my heart raced 100 miles per hour. I slowly nodded my head, taking the beautiful wolf in. Oh, goddess, he was even more good-looking than Brian. Ethan pulled his hand through his ash-blonde hair, and his muscles flexed under his white t-shirt. My gaze landed on his rock-hard abs, hiding under his shirt. I unconsciously licked my lips and suddenly had this burning desire to reach out and touch them. "My name is Ethan Smith," he suddenly said, introducing himself, and my gaze landed on his cold blue eyes. I shivered, feeling cold. Was this wolf cold-hearted and cruel? Would the goddess mate me with someone like that? I shook the thoughts off and forced my attention back to him. "I am the next in line alpha wolf from the Red Moon Pack," he said, shifting his head to the side. "Who are you?" I kept quiet as I admired the handsome wolf in front of me, my imagination running wild. Ethan had gone quiet and was patiently waiting for me to say something. "Hi," I stuttered nervously. "My name is Catherine Jones from the Silver Moonstone Pack," I said, and Ethan narrowed his cold eyes. I am the daughter of Alpha Duncan Jones." "What is a pretty girl like you doing so far away from her pack?" he asked. He took a seat in front of me, pinning his cold eyes on me. I was trying to find the words to explain my dilemma when his eyes widened in shock. "Are you?" He couldn't form the words. He must have seen my wheelchair. "Yes," I answered. "I had an accident, and—" Ethan jumped to his feet, sending the chair flying to the side. Anger radiated off him, and he expanded his aura. Wolves around us whimpered and lowered their gazes. "I can't be mated to a disabled mate," he growled dangerously and scrunched his hands into fists. "Why?" I stuttered nervously. "There is not." "What will my pack think of me having a misfit as a mate?" he growled, cutting me off. "You will only be a liability to me and my pack." "I am capable." He violently shook his head. "I will not risk my pack or my life on a broken, disabled thing like you. You don't even deserve to have a wolf. You would have been better off dead." My eyes widened, my body shook out of shock, and my heart scrunched painfully and shattered into a million pieces, hearing his poisonous words. Is this how he sees me? A useless and worthless wolf? Before I could stop and explain to Ethan my situation, he uttered the words of rejection, and we both gasped for air. Was he seriously doing this? I shook my head, bewildered and unable to say anything. Tears were burning behind my eyes, ready to spill over and tell him how much he was hurting me. Ethan lifted his head through the pain. He had a murderous look on his face, and his eyes turned red. "Accept it," he growled through the excruciating pain. "Or else, I will make your life a living hell until the day you die." "I never wanted an ugly, disabled, useless mate like you. You will never be Luna." I swallowed hard against the dry lump that had formed in my throat. I never expected that someone would just turn their back and throw their mate away. Kia suddenly whimpered at the back of my mind, and I knew she had given up on the newfound bond. I lifted my gaze and found his. His cold blue eyes seemed to be in some sort of conflict. Was he fighting his wolf? "Now!" he ordered, as the pain forced him onto his knees before my wolf. "I accept," I answered clearly, and I watched as the bond was cut in half and Ethan turned around, rushing out of the restaurant, leaving me hurt, cold, and alone. Will I ever be accepted? Catherine's POV. Here we go again, I whispered, feeling my heart leap out of my chest. The three wolves were eye candy, each with his own characteristics, yet all three of them seemed to be so similar. A breath escaped my lips as my heart scrunched hurtfully in my chest. I could just imagine the amount of agony that would ripple through my body when all three rejected me at the same time. Why would the moon goddess do this to me? Why send me a mate again? And why 3 mates at once? Oh, goddess, I internally whined. What are you playing at? Do you hate me so much that you will send triplets to reject me now? Wasn't 2 enough? Wasn't I punished enough? 3 curious and confused gazes were still pinned on me, yet none of them moved or came to introduce themselves. I guess they couldn't understand why I didn't answer their call. Will they catch the hint and leave if I ignore them long enough? I turned toward Sammy, hoping he could save me in this awkward situation, yet he had moved away from me and stood frozen like a statue a few feet away from me, his gaze pinned on the floor. Sammy? I whispered, trying to get his attention. Yet Sammy ignored me. My gaze moved back to the 3 good-looking wolves, and I focused my attention on them. I started to memorize their faces. Not that it will help. They will forget about me the second they reject me and move on. Yet I couldn't help but imagine pulling my fingers through their dark, shiny hair or even feeling their hands touch my body. I imagined myself having all 3 at once. I shook the thoughts off just as fast as they appeared and focused on each of them. They all had different hairstyles, and I wondered if that made it easier to recognize who was who. I sighed, feeling slightly heartbroken, when I noticed that they were all sculpted like Greek gods. Their bodies looked rock-hard and toned under their shirts. Each was blessed with a strong jaw, a straight nose, blue eyes, and kissable lips, and power radiated from each of them, especially the one in front. He is your alpha, isn't he? I whispered under my breath. Sammy slowly nodded his head, refusing to meet my gaze. Wonderful. Just wonderful. Alphas. As if I didn't have enough agony in my life, the goddess would send 3 at once. Warm tears burned behind my eyelids, and I blinked, hoping to be able to push them back. I gritted my teeth out of anger and balled my fists. The 3 wolves seemed to notice, and the one in the center nodded his head and turned to the other 2. Good. They must have noticed my defect. Let's get the ball rolling and have these rejections done. I am starving. Before I could process what was happening, one of the 3 stalked toward my table. Fuck! I internally swore and dropped my gaze toward my lap, fiddling nervously with my fingers. Why are you ignoring our mate's claim? The deep, husky voice asked, sending sensual shivers down my spine, ending at my core. Fuck! I internally growled. I wouldn't mind keeping listening to that wolf's voice. Get a grip, Catherine. He is here to reject us. Kia stirred in my mind, yet she didn't even attempt to come forward. Bloody wolf, I internally growled. The least you could have done was meet them. But it was no use. Kia never comes out and never talks to me. I was basically wolfless now that I was broken. Are you going to answer me? He suddenly asked, startling me in the process. I lifted my gaze toward him. His posture was strong and dominant, just like any other typical alpha. He was close to 6'6", with broad shoulders and biceps to die for. He moved his arms bending over the table, and I couldn't help but admire the strong and handsome man. Oh, goddess, how I wish I could run my hands down his abs. His black hair was neatly cut, not like the other 2 who stood at the door, and I guessed his age to be around 24. Are you unable to speak? Are you mute? He barked his next question, which in return I lifted an eyebrow. Is he dumb? Didn't he just hear me speak and place my order? I shifted my head to the side and scrunched my eyebrows together, then lifted my eyes and found those deep pools of blue staring back at me. Will you do the rejection, or should I? I asked. Bewildered at my words, he stood up straight and looked at me as if I had just kicked him in the guts. And why would I want to do that? He asked, staring at me in disbelief. Well, who would want a wolf like me? I challenged. I am broken, and you need a strong and healthy Luna to rule by your side. But you look fine to me, he argued. If only you knew, I said, disappointed. Who are you? He suddenly asked. Great, now we are getting somewhere. I sighed. I didn't want to go through unnecessary pain before I got home, but this was for the best. At least my parents wouldn't have any knowledge of my rejection. My name is Catherine Jones, or Kate for short. I am part of the Silver Moonstone Pack, and you? I asked, keeping eye contact. Silence followed as his gaze moved over my face, drinking me in. Don't worry, boy, you will get over me the second the mate bond is broken, and you can go on and have a happy ever after with some chosen mate. Alpha Colt. My head snapped toward the door, seeing my younger brother Jimmy walking in with a broad smile. He rushed toward my table and held out a hand. Alpha Colt took Jimmy's hand in his and gave it a shake, then turned bewildered toward me. I see you have met my sister Kate, Jimmy said, and he let go of Colt's hand and walked toward me, planting a kiss on my cheek. Revelation and anger crossed Alpha Colt's eyes, and his left eye twitched. Kate, this is Alpha Colt from the White River Pack. Jimmy introduced us and turned his head toward the other two men still standing, frozen, with their gazes pinned on me. That is Gray and Sam, Alpha Colt's younger brothers. They are his Beta and Delta. Silence followed as I stared into Colt's eyes. Should I start? I challenged. Why do you want to get rid of me? He asked bitterly, keeping his voice dangerously low. Because I am broken, I repeated, getting annoyed. Doesn't this man listen? Doesn't he understand? What do I need to do to make him see? Jimmy's head moved between the two of us, unsure of what was going on. Broken items can be fixed or mended, he said, keeping eye contact. I laughed out loud, and Alpha Colt's face changed from serious to confused. Sammy, I called the waiter, please bring me my chair. I would like to leave. The spell on Sammy broke, and he scrambled in search of my wheelchair, and a minute later, he pushed the wheelchair to my table. Alpha Colt's eyes widened, yet he didn't say a word. I pulled the chair closer, lifted my body from my chair, and took a seat in the wheelchair. When I was completely comfortable in my chair, I lifted my gaze in search of Alpha Colt's face. So, I taunted. What will it be? Colt's POV. Beta Henry called, Gray said as he walked into the small sitting area we shared at Ruby Crescent Pack. The sitting area wasn't very big but cozy. At least the Ruby Crescent Pack Alpha could provide me with an office to continue with my pack work. I internally sighed, frustrated. We have been on the road for at least 6 months now, hoping to find our fated mate. Yet, after all these months, we haven't even gotten a whiff of her. Ray, my wolf, believed that our mate had already been born, and he was adamant about finding her. Even if it meant that we needed to go to the end of the world to find her, my mind wonders for just a second about the possibility of finding my mate. I wouldn't care what she looked like, what breed she was, where she came from, or what her rank or status was. As long as she accepted and wanted me, I would be happy. Yet there was just one small bump in the road. All 3 of us might be mated to the same she-wolf. I shook the gray thoughts off. We, as triplet brothers, have discussed the issue, and we will court our fated mate until she decides who she wants. And? I asked, closing the laptop. There was an incident, he started, and worry crossed his eyes. What kind of incident? I asked, interested to know. Gray knew better than to hide anything from me. He would tell me eventually, even if I had to drag it out of him. Some days I wish I could just use an alpha command on him, but because I haven't gotten the alpha title yet, my commands and orders wouldn't work on him. Rogue attack, he answered, and the way he said that told me that this wasn't our normal rogue attack. It is normal in our world to have a rogue attack. Rogue werewolves like us just do not belong to a pack. They usually move in groups without an alpha to lead them, trying to scavenge something from the packs in surrounding areas. Yes, and? I asked, getting impatient. Father was hurt, he answered. How bad is it? I asked, getting up from my seat. Beta Henry says it's bad, but it could have been worse. Father's wolf is struggling to heal him, he answered. That only meant that Wolf's Bane or Silver was involved, which meant this wasn't over. The rogues were out looking for someone or something. And they had another attack last night, he continued, taking a seat. I'm worried, Colt. This isn't normal. I agree. I answered and turned my gaze towards the front door, seeing Samuel enter. Hey, guys, Sam called happily and jumped over the couch to take a seat next to Gray, happy as if nothing in the world was wrong. His sunshine and happy-go-lucky personality were something I never got used to. I lifted an eyebrow and looked at Gray, and I knew he was about to complain. Sam, seriously, He growled. We haven't even been here a day and... Sam rolled his eyes and flicked his hair back. Didn't we come out here to find a mate? He asked, annoyed. Yes, to find our fated mate, not test drive every unmated she-wolf, he sneered through gritted teeth. Well, I am keeping my options open, he said. I never know if I will be the one who needs to take a chosen mate one day. Besides, a bit of fun on the sidelines is good for you. Maybe you should try it. It might loosen you up. Sam was the youngest among the three of us and was always considered the baby of the group. When we grew up, he still used that to his advantage to get what he wanted. Well, Sam, you better get packing. We will be leaving in less than an hour, I warned him. Sam's face fell and his bottom lip quivered in disappointment. Why? He sulked. We just got here and... The pack is in trouble, I answered, cutting him off. I suggest you tell your newfound toy that we are leaving. Come on, Colt. Seriously, man, Sam complained, indicating the start of an argument. That's enough, I growled. Pack your things. The pack needs us. Sam got up and gave me a disappointed look. Then he stalked toward his room, pissed. I ignored his attitude and turned my attention back to Gray. Will you inform the Alpha of our departure? I asked. I already have, he answered. Half an hour later, I dropped my bag in the back of the black SUV, thanked the Alpha for his hospitality, then left, taking the 6-hour drive back home. It was well after lunchtime when we drove into the human town centered among all the packs. I'm hungry, Sam whined. Let's stop for something to eat. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding and took the turnoff toward Latino's. We haven't been here for a while, and it might be good to see Carlos again. The man had some personality, and maybe he could put us in a better mood before arriving at the pack. I brought the SUV to a stop and turned to Sam, raising an eyebrow at him. This isn't a buffet, I warned him. It's go in and get something to eat and leave. Sam sighed, rolled his eyes, and then, just like a teenager, he jumped out of the SUV and stormed towards the restaurant's door. That wasn't necessary, Gray said. He is still our brother. Yeah, I cut him off. It is just a shame he doesn't act like one of us. He has been screwing around from the minute we left home. You're right, Gray sighed, but still. Gray shook his head at me and calmly got out and walked toward the restaurant door. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and called my mother. Son? Her soft, sweet voice came over the receiver. She sounded tired. What's wrong? Mother, we are heading home, I answered. Did you find her? Them? She asked, sounding a bit more excited than a few seconds ago. No, I answered. The pack is more important than us finding our mate, I told her. I was informed of the current situation. Colt, she sighed on the other side. Mom, we are about an hour away, I said, cutting the call. I knew if I kept talking to her, she would find a way to talk me out of returning home. I headed to the restaurant entrance and froze at the door. A faint smell of caramel lingered in the air, and my mouth watered to taste it. Ray stirred in my mind. Odd, I thought. Ray never reacts to anything. A smile played at the corners of my lips, and my mind wandered off toward my younger years, remembering my mother's baking. It smells like home, Ray commented. It does, I agreed. I opened the restaurant's door and found my brothers standing frozen in the reception area, their gazes pinned on something. It was in that very second that I noticed the intoxicating scent of caramel coming from inside the restaurant, and I pushed past my brothers, searching for her. The one I would call mate. Colt's POV. A ghost of a smile played at the corners of my lips. There was no way I would let this girl go. She had too much fight left in her. She would make a great Luna, even if she was unable to walk. I, Colt Black, future Alpha of the White River Pack, hereby accept you, Catherine Jones, as my mate. The surprise in Kate's eyes was noticeable. Her face turned pale in shock, and her bottom lip quivered. How I wished I could take her juicy, rose-colored quivering lip and suck on it. I bent down, stopping less than an inch from her nape, excitement bubbling inside me. Catherine Jones, I whispered, only for her to hear. I will never reject you. I watched in amusement as she shivered as my breath brushed over her nape. Her eyes darkened out of frustration. Did she really believe I would give up on her that easily? I will never accept your rejection either, I told her before I got up. Even if Gray and Sam decide to reject her, I will never get it over my heart to break the bond between us. She was mine. I was already in too deep, and I had known her for a mere 5 minutes. Kate turned her gaze toward me, and her eyes turned emerald green out of anger. I pinned her gaze just long enough for her to see that I was serious. "I will make you mine," I said, and moved away from her, sooner than later. When my gaze landed on the beautiful auburn-colored she-wolf with big forest green eyes, sitting alone at a table a few minutes ago, she looked like an angel under the restaurant lights. Never in my wildest dreams did I expect that our first meeting would go south and end so coldly. There was something about this she-wolf that was awakening my insides, and it made me afraid. I wasn't exactly sure why, but I knew I wouldn't be able to live without her. Losing her would drive me insane, and not being with her made my insides feel cold and lonely. At that very moment, I knew she was the one for me. Not because of the mate bond, but because of the fire that was hidden behind those beautiful, sad green eyes. I needed her in my life just as much as she needed me. Kate's angelic voice was calling me to her, and I had fallen under her spell. Her poisonous words electrocuted my soul and numbed my mind, yet I didn't mind. I would suck up that poison any day just to be there by her side. Does she have no self-esteem to believe that she is good enough? Was she hurt so badly that she would rather have everyone pushed away just to save herself? Kate gave me one more look before she gestured to her brother that she wanted to go. Carlos rushed toward her, but he stopped in his tracks when he saw her face. He didn't even try to stop her, and he moved out of the way. Another ghost of a smile formed on my lips. I have rattled and shaken Kate's little perfect world, which she had built around herself to the core. There is no stopping me now. I will break down those high walls around her, brick by brick, until only a foundation stands, and then I will rebuild a castle in that foundation's place. If only she had known that this was just the beginning. I would never stop until she accepted me. "Aren't you going to stop her?" Sam whined over the mind link, frustrated. I turned my gaze toward my brothers. They had the same look in their eyes that I had. I guess they saw what I saw in her and decided that she was good enough for them as well. A spike of jealousy crossed my heart. I will have some competition to fight for her hand. "No," I said. "Let her go. We know where to find her." Sam growled, frustrated, and rushed behind Kate out the door. "Stop him, Gray," I growled, "or else." Gray nodded, unsure how to react, yet he did as I told him and followed Sam out the door. I turned my attention toward Ray, who was just as upset as Sam about me letting Kate go. "Can you connect with her wolf?" I asked. I was hoping to have Kate's wolf change her mind and get her to accept me. "I will certainly try," he answered, annoyed, and took off to the depths of my mind. Finally, some peace and quiet. "I heard that!" Ray yelled from the depths of my mind. I headed outside, finding my brothers standing outside the door, their gazes pinned on the black SUV. The driver rushed toward Kate, looking confused, yet when he saw us, he froze and hesitated. "Stop it, Sam," I growled under my breath. "Let her go." I knew Sam was trying to intimidate the driver not to leave. "How are you so calm about this?" Sam snapped. "She is our mate. We need to claim her." "In due time, brother," I said, watching Kate get into the SUV. "Have some patience." When the driver eventually got everything in the SUV and drove off, Kate turned her gaze and looked at us from the window. "She has already started to show interest," I said. Excitement bubbled up inside me. This was even better than a hunt. Gray scrunched his eyebrows together, looking confused, yet didn't say anything. "Wait, what?" Sam snapped. "What the fuck are you talking about? You let her go." I rolled my eyes and shook my head. He might be the womanizer among the three of us, but he didn't know much about women. "If we keep Kate here against her will, she will fight against everything we say and do," I answered. "What are you planning to do?" Gray asked. "We just followed our original plan," I answered, "courting our mate until she decides which one she wants." "If that doesn't work?" Sam growled. "Oh," I said as a taunting smile followed on my lips, "believe me, she will." Catherine's POV. My temper spiraled out of control after hearing Alpha Colt's words, and I saw red. I hissed under my breath out of anger and balled my fists. Can't this man see that I am not capable of being what he wants me to be? I will never be his Luna. I will never give in and ruin his life. I will never put his pack in danger. Jimmy gave me a confused look, saw my anger, and rushed to my side. Without a word, he steered me out of the restaurant in a hurry. That didn't keep Colt and his brothers from following us. Raven saw Jimmy bolting with the wheelchair toward the SUV. He too gave me a confused look, cut the call he was on, and rushed toward me. Miss Jones is everything. Raven's head snapped toward the restaurant door and froze, then shivered openly in fear. Great, I internally growled. Now Colt and his brothers are intimidating my pack members as well. Raven's face turned gray, and he hovered, unsure what to do in front of me. He looked as if he was about to run off and flee for his life. I dare not look over my shoulder. I refused to give in. Seriously, I growled out loud. Raven, open the passenger door. I want to leave, and I want to leave now. That broke the spell on Raven, and he lowered his gaze, seeing me. He nodded and rushed toward opening the passenger door for me. Jimmy helped me into the SUV, while Raven opened the trunk and loaded my wheelchair. When we were all settled in, Raven started the SUV and sped off toward home. I turned my gaze curiously out the window, seeing Colt and his brothers standing and watching. Colt had an excited smirk on his face. I shivered, not feeling cold but out of excitement. What the fuck? I internally growled at myself. How could I allow Colt to do this to me? There was no way that I would give in that easily. I sighed, relieved, knowing that wolves weren't allowed to shift here. I was sure the youngest one, Sam, would have shifted and followed us. He looked in pain, and the loneliness was clearly written in his blue eyes. So? Jimmy asked and lifted an eyebrow. You are mated to Alpha Colt? If only he had known it was all three of them. He is really not a bad alpha, Jimmy continued seriously. He is very fair and treats his pack members with love and respect. He is due to take the alpha title soon. What was Jimmy getting at? Does he want me to be mated to Colt? Does he want to get rid of me so easily? I can't be with him, I said coldly. And why not? Jimmy asked. He will treat you like a princess. I just know he will. Does Jimmy know Colt personally? Does he like Colt? Jimmy, I stopped him. It's not that. My heart scrunched painfully in my chest. After Brian's betrayal, I was reluctant to believe in love again, but when I met Ethan, I had high hopes of being accepted. Even that small piece of hope was shattered into pieces. I suddenly felt tired, like all the life was drained out of me. How do I explain this to him? He wasn't the one who got rejected or stuck in a wheelchair. Then what is it? He whispered, searching my gaze. The goddess is giving you a second chance at happiness. Why would you want to? I sighed and turned my gaze back toward the window, feeling warm tears burn behind my eyes. I was scared. If I gave in to the bond, Colt and his brothers would get bored sooner rather than later, and I would be shifted to the side. I would rather live with being rejected than the excruciating pain of being betrayed by them. My gaze landed on the forest. I always wanted to be able to run through the forest and feel the damp ground under my paws and the wind rushing through my fur. Life would have been much easier if I had been capable of doing that. At least I could have run away in wolf form, but we never completed the shift, and Kia refused to come forward. I sighed. It's complicated. I eventually replied, Colt is not my second chance, mate. I was sure I could trust Jimmy, and the chances that he would tell my parents were slim. I shook my head, cutting Jimmy off, and turned my gaze toward him, giving him a sad smile. I was rejected while in Switzerland, I said, because of my condition. Jimmy nodded in understanding, and he closed his eyes, trying to control his temper. Don't be mad, I said and rubbed his arm. There is a reason why I wasn't marked and mated to my second chance mate. Jimmy opened his eyes, yet I could read the anger and the pity in them. Don't feel sorry for me, I continued, searching Jimmy's gaze. I am okay. I have accepted the fact that I shouldn't have a mate. My second chance mate made it very clear that I would only be a liability. Who was he? Jimmy sneered through gritted teeth out of anger. It doesn't matter, I said calmly. He is long gone out of my mind. Jimmy gave me one more look, searching for any evidence that I was lying, then let out a breath. I still think you should give Alpha Colt a chance, he argued. He looks very interested in you. I huffed in annoyance, but I couldn't help feeling my face flush. Colt and his brothers were indeed handsome. Just until he gets bored and fed up with me, I said, having a disabled mate is an enormous task. Not everyone is willing. But Raven suddenly hit the brakes, cutting Jimmy off, and the SUV spiraled out of control, hitting something. Catherine's POV. "Oh, Goddess Kate." My mother's familiar voice rang in my ears as soon as we stopped at the pack house. "Are you guys okay?" Colt and his brothers found our car next to the road, checked on us, saw that Raven wasn't capable of driving because he was hurt, and took us home. Jimmy called our parents and informed them of our accident. He just told them we were in good hands, not to worry, and cut the call. "We are fine, Mom," I said as Colt got out of the driver's seat, opened the passenger door for me, and lowered himself to help me out. I tried to argue with him to let me be and that I could do it myself, but Colt growled under his breath and carefully lifted me out of the passenger seat. I held my breath to ensure I couldn't get lost in his scent. As soon as our skin touched, small electric sparks erupted, and I gasped and inhaled his intoxicating sandalwood scent. Our gazes locked, and for a moment, nothing around me mattered. In those few seconds, I drowned in Colt's serious blue eyes, and pictures of my future flashed before my eyes. A warm, fuzzy feeling of unconditional love moved through me, and images of myself running through an open clearing, laughing with the triplets chasing after me, flashed before my eyes. "What happened?" my father asked, breaking the connection between me and Colt. Colt set me down and took a step away from me. I wasn't sure if he saw something as well, but he did look a bit bewildered and concerned. Raven lost control over the SUV, and why the f*** is there a rogue lying on the back seat of the SUV? Brian yelled out ferociously, cutting me off. My gaze snapped toward him, and I felt my insides scrunch together. I didn't expect him to be there when we arrived. My gaze moved over his features, noticing that he looked much older and thinner than a year ago. Was he ill? "Brian!" I tried to stop him, but he didn't give me a chance to explain. "Guards! Get him out of here!" Brian ordered. "Brian, he is hurt!" I tried to explain. "Guards! Take the rogue down to the dungeon. Lock him up!" "No, he is hurt. Take him to the infirmary," I ordered. A flash of worry crossed my parents' eyes, yet they didn't say anything. "Are you mad?" Brian yelled at me and took a step toward me. The triplets growled dangerously under their breaths. They didn't like the way Brian was talking to me, and a couple of pack bystanders took a quick step away from them. "I don't care if he is hurt." Brian hissed at me, ignoring the triplets' warning growl. "He is a rogue, for Goddess' sake." "Father," I said, turning toward my parents. "The rogue might be severely hurt. Raven hit him with an SUV. We just need to check him out, then he can leave." "It doesn't matter." Brian cut me off again, saying, "He is a rogue and doesn't deserve to have any help from us. Or did you forget what happened to you?" Anger flared up in me, and I pushed my wheelchair forward and lifted my gaze. "My father, your alpha, confirmed that my injury was not because of a rogue attack," I growled, pissed back at him. "The rogue is hurt, and we are responsible for his injuries. He is just as much human and wolf as any of us. Take him to the infirmary." I expanded my aura, and Brian whimpered before he dropped his gaze. I might not be able to walk, but Kia did leave me some interesting abilities to use. My father nodded his head, and the warriors carried the rogue to our infirmary. "Cuff him," Brian ordered, "and make sure he is guarded." Brian turned toward me, anger written on his face. "You have doomed us all by letting a rogue into the pack. If he hurts someone, it's all on you." "That's enough," Colt roared and pushed himself between us. "Who are you to tell me when it's enough?" Brian hissed, sizing Colt up. Colt kept quiet, crossed his arms around his chest, and lifted an eyebrow. In a bare second, Sam and Gray were at his side. "Alpha Colt is your future alpha," Jimmy chirped, walking closer. He was out to use this information to taunt Brian. After Brian's rejection, Jimmy kept tabs on him. I didn't want to know anything about his personal life. He was free to do what he pleased, but Jimmy had other ideas. He knew that if I was unable to walk again, he would be taking over as alpha someday, and because of what Brian did to me, he was reluctant to have him as a beta. Confusion crossed Brian's eyes, and he shook his head. "You decided to take a chosen mate?" Brian gasped, bewildered, with wide eyes. What was that to him? He had everything, but he took it away. It's been over a year already. There is no way he has any feelings for me. The bond has been broken between us. "No," I answered, shaking my head. "I have not taken anything." The triplets turned their gazes toward me, and longing, with a dash of sadness, crossed their eyes. "Then what is Jimmy talking about?" Brian asked, and a spike of jealousy crossed his eyes. "Alpha Colt is Kate's mate," Jimmy said, amused. "So are we," Sam uttered, gesturing between him and Gray. "All three of them," Brian growled. Jimmy burst out laughing, finding the situation amusing, then glared at me. "It's not even double trouble, but triple trouble," he said, turning back to watch Brian's face. "Is this true?" my mother asked in wonder. "Yes, Mother," I answered. "But—" Brian huffed, cutting me off, and my gaze moved toward him, where he pushed through between Sam and Gray. He stopped in front of me, bent down, laid his hand on the wheelchair armrest, and looked me in the eyes. The golden specks in his eyes looked hard and cold, and every now and then his eyes would flicker to black. Haiti must be fighting for control. I wonder what his deal was. Brian let out a breath, shifted his head to the side, and grinned. "You always acted so pure and innocent," he said, pulling his lips in a sneer, "but it seems to me, between all of us, you were the whore after all." Catherine's POV. My alarm clock startled me awake, and my hand automatically reached for it and pressed the snooze button. Not that it helped. 5 minutes later, it yelled at me even louder to get out of bed. I grunted and pulled my body into a sitting position. My gaze moved over my new bedroom, which looked similar to the one I had lived in with my parents in the Alpha quarters. My father had this great idea of renovating an area on the ground floor into a living space for me. He was trying to make my life a bit easier. My new sleeping area consisted of a bedroom, bathroom, walk-in closet, and sitting area for guests, and my favorite was the beautiful porch that opened from the sitting area overlooking the pack and forest. I sighed. My father did a lot of renovations to the pack house to let me move around more easily. I pulled the white duvet cover from me, grabbed hold of the wheelchair, and pulled it closer to the bed. I then swung my legs off the bed and pulled my body onto the chair. Getting in and out of the wheelchair had become easier day by day. I pulled my legs up and set my feet on the footrest, then pushed my chair toward my walk-in closet, grabbed my clothes for the day, and wheeled myself toward my spacious bathroom. I stopped in front of the shower, grabbed my white towel from the rail, and threw it over my shoulder. In the beginning, it was difficult for me to move around, and simple things were hard to do on my own. I couldn't even take a simple shower without anyone's help. A small smile played on the corners of my lips, appreciating my father's efforts. He made sure my bathroom area was big enough for me to move around in a wheelchair, and he gave me a spacious shower as well. I stopped at the glass doors, stripped myself of my clothes, then opened the shower door, climbed over onto a plastic chair with wheels, slowly moved toward the shower tap, and opened the water. When the water eventually ran warm, I locked my legs in a small frame my father designed for me and pulled myself up into a standing position. The stand clicked into position around my waist, supporting my weight and keeping me upright. A smile followed my lips. My father was a genius with his contraptions. The hot water danced on my skin, and my mind wandered off to the last night after my return. The rogue was still unconscious in the infirmary, but my father made sure he was safely guarded and that he would receive the medical attention he needed. I have been at his bedside, and to me, he looked a bit too young to be a rogue. My mind races with so many unanswered questions. Did the rogue have a family? Were they looking for him? Or was he just lost and in need of a family? Why did he run into the street? Was something or someone chasing him? Colt stopped me when I wanted to get closer to the rogue, but when our gazes locked, he must have seen something and let me pass. Even his brothers moved out of the way without a word. I guess he knew that I would not obey him. I pushed the wheelchair to the edge of the hospital bed, nodded my head at Jimmy, and he lowered the bed for me. I carefully picked up the rogue's hand, hearing the triplets whimpering from behind me. They didn't like me touching anyone else, and I could feel Kia stir in the back of my mind when I heard them. Why is Kia suddenly more active? I pushed the thought off and concentrated on the boy on the bed. The rogue looked around my age, maybe a year younger, I wasn't sure. His thick, dark, shiny chocolate brown hair was cut short, and he looked maintained and healthy, not like someone running wild. I wonder what color his eyes were. I drank his features in, seeing that he was a handsome wolf, and girls his age would easily fall over their feet for his attention. Yet something in his face caught my attention, and a worry-filled feeling of knowing pushed through me. I just couldn't put my finger on it. Who was this boy? Do I know him? Have I seen him before, or was it just my imagination? I shifted my head to the side, and for a second, the rogue reminded me of Brian. Was that why I felt so much compassion for him? My thoughts shifted toward Brian. His words hurt me even more than his rejection. How heartless was he, and why? I haven't done anything to deserve his cruelty. Kia whimpered in agony at the back of my mind, bringing me back to my presence, and I sighed, closing the shower tap. Was Kia still hoping for Haiti to sweep her off her feet? Hoping for him to love her, us? Could such a bond be mended after he ripped my heart out, humiliated me, and slept around? I shook the thoughts off and focused on the triplets' reactions yesterday. In the last couple of months, I never had someone fight for me or react to me like they did. Before the last venomous word escaped Brian's lips, Gray's hand was around Brian's neck, choking him. Power radiated off him, and his anger could be felt like a flame surrounding him. Colt stood there with a smirk, his beautiful, serious blue eyes cold and deadly. He wanted to have Gray make nothing of Brian. Sam, on the other hand, stood ready like a lion, waiting for Gray to drop his prey and have a turn with him. His facial expression was hard, and his jaw muscles were jumping in his face out of anger. I reached out to Gray and laid my hand carefully on his arm, hoping he would listen to me. The same intense sparks I had with Colt erupted between me and Gray, and he turned his gaze toward me, bewildered. "Let him go," I said, pleading. Gray shook his head and turned toward his brothers, seeking help. "It's not worth it, Gray," I said. "Brian is just an asshole." Colt nodded his head, and Gray let go of Brian, thus dropping him on the ground. He then stalked off, and all three brothers left without another word. I sighed. I almost had one less pack member. Brian should be happy that I saved his ass. I shook the thoughts off and quickly finished washing, rinsed myself from the soap, and got out. When I was done with my morning routine, it was already after 8 a.m., and a soft knock sounded at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone so early, and I pushed my chair toward the door, interested to know who had come to see me. When I opened the door, I couldn't help but be surprised, and anger flared up inside me. Catherine's POV. "You have some nerve to show your face," I spat, pulling my lips together in disgust as I tried to slam the door shut. "Kate, please!" Sarah begged and pushed her foot between the door and the frame, keeping the door open. "We need to talk." "I have absolutely nothing more to say to you," I growled at her, trying to close the door. "And I have a lot to say," she hit back, holding the door. "I'll talk, and you just listen." "No," I growled, pissed. "I don't want to hear any of it." "Stop being so stubborn," she yelled at me. "You are my best friend, and friends forgive one another. Not when they fucking fall pregnant with one another's mates." Sarah kept quiet, and she removed her foot from between the door and the frame, and the door clicked shut. A moment of silence followed, and for a second I thought she might have left. "I am sorry, Kate," she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear her. "It wasn't supposed to have happened." "But it did," I whispered to myself, feeling the tears burning behind my eyelids. Sarah was my best friend, but her betrayal hurt me even more than Brian's. "I know I have hurt you," Sarah continued, "but I wish there was some way I could make it up to you and show you how sorry I am." There was no way I could ever trust her. The damage was already done. There was no turning back. "I wanted you to know that the pup has been taken care of," she said, and her voice broke. Sarah sounded broken, like a piece of her had been taken and ripped out of her. Did the pup die? Did she have a miscarriage? I slowly opened the door and looked at her. Her green eyes had no life in them. They looked dead and withered. "What happened?" I asked. "Brian," I growled under my breath, yet Sarah stopped me. "Can I come in?" she asked, sounding tired. I guess it was draining the life out of her to come and talk to me. I sighed, giving in, and moved out of the way. Sarah walked in and hesitated. "You can take a seat," I said, pushing my wheelchair toward the living room. Sarah took a seat, and silence followed. It gave me some time to read her. "So?" I eventually asked. "He made me give her up for adoption," she said, and her shoulders hung. Jimmy didn't tell me any of this, but maybe he knew it would piss me off. Why? I asked. Because he couldn't bear to look at her, she answered. Who took her in? I asked. Ironically, his father, Beta Harold, and his mate, she answered. I scrunched my eyebrows together but didn't say anything. Then she is safe? I asked, not looking at her. Yes, and Beta Harold allows me to see her from time to time, she said, fiddling with the hem of her shirt. Then why do you look so broken? Sarah sneered and got to her feet. Because I am. Why? I asked, getting impatient. You can now do whatever you want. You don't have any responsibilities. Kate, she growled, are you hearing yourself? She turned and faced me, angry tears in her eyes. I lost everything when I fell pregnant with Brian's pup, she yelled and balled her fist. I have lost my virginity, my best friend, and the respect of the pack. I was kicked out of the warrior program, and then I had to give up my pup because of him. And that's now what? My fault? I asked. Sarah shook her head. You wouldn't understand, she whispered. Understand what? I asked. You made your bed. Now you need to sleep in it. I don't want to, she yelled. I want everything to go back to the way it was. And what do you suggest I do? I asked, lifting my gaze and looking at her. There is no way I can forgive you, not after all you did to me. She sighed and sat back. I know, she said, sounding tired, but if you can get in your heart, could we try and start over? Start over? I gasped, knitting my eyebrows together. Like being what? Friends? Yes, she said, searching my gaze. I miss you, us. I know I screwed up. When Brian and I saw you so broken in the hospital bed and heard the news about how bad it was, we never thought that things would turn that way. So you two decided to be chosen mates? I snapped. If only, she said, dropping and shaking her head. Brian and I were. I don't want to hear this, I cut her off. Oh, yes, you do, she snapped. Sarah, I growled, warning her. I didn't want to know how they got together or even when it happened. It was pointless. They both hurt me. Catherine, you need to know this, she said and jumped to her feet. What was it with Sarah? Why was she so nervous, and why were all her emotions spiraling out of control? This wasn't the girl I grew up with. I crossed my arms around my chest, pissed. I knew if I didn't listen to her now, she would find a way to make me listen. My thoughts raced back to our younger years, when nothing else mattered more than us. Only once did we have a major argument, and even though I couldn't remember what it was about, I remember how she pestered me for days to listen to her until she cornered me in the girls' bathroom, locked the door, and told me what happened. This was basically the same scenario. The only difference is that this time she has the upper hand and I can't just run away. When I didn't say anything, Sarah took the opportunity and continued. Kate, Sarah said as she squatted before me, we were invited to a festival at one of the neighboring packs. So you two got drunk, kissed, and no, she said, cutting me off and getting up. We can't remember anything except arriving at the pack. Afterward, we only remembered pieces of the ceremony. We don't know how we ended up together, and a few days later, I found out I was pregnant. I knitted my eyebrows together, confused. There was no way I could believe this. And you expect me to believe that? I asked, and I pushed my wheelchair toward the door. I think it's time for you to leave. Colt's POV. I couldn't get Kate out of my mind. Her beautiful face was haunting my dreams throughout the night, and her intoxicating smell was still lingering around me. Ray wasn't much help either. He had been scratching at the surface to give him control since the moment we entered our pack. He wanted to go to Kate's and stay by her side until she understood that we wanted her. He was adamant about convincing her that he wanted and needed her. I did ask Ray if he managed to connect with Kate's wolf, and I was surprised at his attitude. We will have to convince Kate to have us ourselves, he growled, irritated. I guess he had hoped that this would be an easy journey for both of us and that we could claim and have our mate like any other normal wolf would do. Why? What happened? I asked, interested to know. Nothing, he answered, but I could see there was something that was bothering him. He knew something, and he was withholding information. The question was, what? What really happened? Did Kate's wolf tell him to leave her alone, or did she just ignore his presence? Was he even able to connect with her at all? Does Kate still have a wolf? I shook the last thought off. I was sure she did have a wolf, but I wasn't sure if she had ever completed the shift. Soon after our conversation, Ray disappeared into the depths of my mind. He looked sad and frustrated, and he was on the verge of snapping. I guess he left to sulk and not take his frustration out on me. I sighed, got out of bed, and headed to my bathroom to take a shower. I was ready to head out for training when my brothers burst into my room. My first response was to growl at them for not knocking and just walk into my quarters. But as soon as I saw the two of them just as miserable as I was, I knew it was going to be extremely hard to have them let go of Kate. My thoughts raced back to yesterday afternoon. I never expected to receive a vision of some sort when I lifted Kate from the passenger seat of the SUV. It changed something inside of me. The longing to be with her increased, and it made me worried. It fucked with my head, and I needed to control everything inside myself, not to claim Kate there and then. My mind replayed the vision, and I remember seeing Kate standing at the edge of some sort of stage, smiling like there was no evil in the world and everything was perfect. She looked perfectly healthy, and she waved at the crowd of pack members below. She turned around, looked at me, and then held out her hand. I was excited about taking her hand and rushed forward to be at her side. But to my disappointment, Gray and Sam walked to her side as well. I couldn't bear the thought. There was no way I would share my mate. I shook the images out of my mind as I tried to erase the idea of sharing her with them. She was too perfect, she was too pure to be shared with anyone but me. My heart suddenly ached in my chest, and Ray whimpered, feeling the same. "Are we going to see Kate today?" Sam asked, bringing me back to my present situation. There was a pinch of longing audible in Samuel's voice, which irritated the living shot out of me. Why he wanted to be with Kate is still a mystery to me. He had slept with so many random and willing she-wolves that the idea of him touching Kate made my blood boil inside my veins. "Maybe later," I answered, and my gaze moved from Sam toward Gray. I scrunched my eyebrows together, looking at them a bit confused. Gray must have seen the confusion on my face, and his eyes lit up before he chuckled, amused. "It is to ensure we even the playing field," he said, watching my expression. "You seriously went and cut your hair into the same style to look like me?" I growled, annoyed. They nodded. "And you two believe that would even the playing field?" I asked in disbelief. They nodded again. "So, what do you expect to gain out of this exercise?" I asked, pulling my lips into a thin line. Anger was slowly blinding me. How dare they take this route? This will confuse everyone around us, maybe even our own mother. "Well, it would make it a bit more difficult for Kate to know who's who," Sam said, looking at Gray for help. "And when she chooses, she wouldn't know which one she has taken," Gray answered, pleased. Ray huffed, rolling his eyes, annoyed at my so-called brothers. He was used to Sam's shut, but seeing Gray participate was new to him. "I guess that was your idea?" I asked Sam. He nodded, pleased, and turned to Gray. "And you let him talk you into this?" I asked. "Yeah, why not?" Gray answered and high-fived Sam. "I think it's a brilliant idea." I raised an eyebrow at Gray because of his sudden courage and boldness. He was always the calmest and most balanced of the three of us. Most people will call him an ambivert, someone who exhibits qualities of both introversion and extroversion, and can flip into either depending on their mood, context, and goals. I guess Kate is bringing out Gray's extrovert side, and if he keeps this up, me and him will have to settle this the wolf way. "You two do know that Kate can scent you, and she would be able to know who's who just from that?" I asked, and a taunting smile followed on my lips as I watched both their faces drop. "And," I tried to sound serious, "neither of you two acts like me, so why even try to look like me?" "We just thought." Sam tried to justify their actions. That's when the most evil idea popped into my head, and I almost burst out laughing as I imagined seeing their facial expression. "I seriously don't mind," I said, smiling, and the two looked at one another, shivering. They knew trouble was coming their way. "If this is how you want to do this, try and act like alpha. Just make sure you two are always dressed the same as me, or else." I let the last words hang in the air for a moment. "Or else what?" Sam asked, swallowing hard as he cocked his head to the side, sounding and looking worried. He knew, and so did Gray, that I didn't play fair, and here they thought they would outsmart me. Now you have their attention, Ray yapped excitedly. Let the games begin. I internally laughed at their faces, or else that brother is the first one to let Kate reject him and move on to finding himself a chosen mate. Colt's POV. Is everything organized? I asked Gray as we stood outside the pack house ready to shift. Yes, he answered. I have phoned Jimmy and told him of our arrival in the next hour. Did you tell him we were going by foot? I asked. I did, Grayson answered. We were going by foot to see if we could find any trace of rogues between the borders, and while we were at it, we would have a quick visit to Kate's before returning home. I nodded my head and started to strip myself of my clothes, tie them around my leg, and shift into my ray. I threw my head back and released a howl that echoed through the valley, advising the pack of my departure. And seconds later, my call was answered by the pack. You do know you could just have mind-linked the pack, Sam said, rolling his eyes at me. And where will the fun be in that? I asked. Sam wasn't particularly happy about us going in wolf form. It wasn't that he couldn't shift or that he struggled with his shifting. It was the idea that he was about to get dirt on his fur and that he needed to run and become sweaty. I patiently sat back and waited for Sam and Gray to shift into their wolves. Sam rolled his eyes at me. You do know we can take the truck and drive to Kate's pack, he commented. It would be much easier and faster. True, I linked back and got to my feet, but then we might scare the rogues away if they hear the truck coming. Gray looked at Sam displeased, shaking his head as he stripped, tied his clothes around his leg, and started his shift. A few seconds later, Duke, a dark gray wolf, took his place next to me. Are you going to be running in human form? Gray asked teasingly, seeing that Sam hadn't even attempted his shift yet. The only advantage of being triplets was that we were gifted a special communication line between the three of us. It didn't matter if we were in human or wolf form. We could all hear the conversation we were having at the same time. I sighed, frustrated at our brother. He was so different and difficult that he must have been swapped around in the hospital when we were born. Grayson shouldered me and gave me a stern look. Did I just say that out loud? I said, feeling a bit embarrassed. Yes, you did, Sam growled, annoyed, and crossed his arms around his chest. I still couldn't understand how he managed to look like Gray and me if he had barely done any training. Well, that's the truth, I growled. You have been difficult from the start. I am not, he hissed at me. It doesn't mean that, because you are stuck up and angry all the time, I need to be like that. I have my own special abilities. Name one, I growled, rolling my eyes at him. He was officially waiting for our time. Sam hesitated, and I cocked Ray's head to the side. This was going to be interesting. Picking up she-wolves, Gray commented, cutting Sam off, and my head snapped toward him. I didn't expect that coming from Gray, and his wolf huffed, finding my expression amusing. Shame on you, Sam yelled, pissed. I thought you were the loving brother among the three of us. I am only the loving brother when you are not wasting our precious time getting to our mate, Gray said and growled at him. So get your ass shifted to Luca or stay here. Either way, we are leaving, with or without you. But, Sam stuttered, wide-eyed at Gray's attitude. We have never experienced Gray being this assertive. He was always the peacemaker, not the chaos creator. Did something happen that Gray didn't tell me about? My mind raced, searching for any clue as to where it could have happened. Then it hit me like a bucket of ice water. Kate had laid her hand on Gray when he was about to rip Brian to pieces. Did he, too, experience a vision when she touched him? Was that possible? I shook the thought off and focused on Sam. You heard your brother, I yapped. Get your ass shifted. You are wasting precious time. We could have been there already. Sam glared at me and pouted before he stripped himself of his clothes and tied them around his leg. Gray and I sat back and patiently waited for Sam to finish his shift. And of course it would take longer than a normal shift because Sam barely let Luca out. Not that Luca minded. On the contrary, he had a very indifferent attitude. He didn't care. I guess that's the reason why Sam could sleep with every she-wolf he could get his hands on. His wolf didn't mind. After about a minute or so, Sam finished his shift, and a light gray wolf stood in his place. When we had our first shift, our mother noted that our wolf's fur was different shades, and she thought it was funny to point it out when she saw Sam. "It looks like the ink must have run out when it came down to you," she said to Sam. If only she knew that it wasn't only his fur color that he lacked. "We will have to get Sam to shift more," I mind-linked Gray. "Yeah, we had better," he agreed, "or else he might fall victim when we are under attack. Make sure, as from tomorrow, he will have double wolf and warrior training until he is up to par," I ordered, and Gray nodded in understanding. Sam wasn't going to like this, but we had no other choice. He was still my brother and part of the pack. With that, I turned and shot like a bat out of hell forward toward the border, in hopes of finding at least a lead on why we were having all these attacks. Afterward, we would make a turn at Kate's and convince her that we wanted her as our mate.